Chapter 874. Duke of Loyalty, you won't kill our general, right? Are you just testing him? Lu Duo, who was tightly tied up, struggled to get up. Even though there were two mercenaries who wanted to hold him down, he still managed to break free from their obstruction and jumped toward Yang Qindong while shouting. I know you. You're called Lu Duo, and you can be considered a fierce general. To be honest, a person like you following Fan Yuhai is like casting pearls before swine. Your general has angered me time and time again, so he must be killed. It's useless for anyone to plead for mercy. On the other hand, if you want to live, you can loudly beg for mercy. Perhaps I will give you a way out. Yang Qindong, who was already far away, suddenly stopped and then turned around to look at Lu Duo. After saying this, Yang Qindong did not wait for Lu Duo to reply. He had already turned around and walked toward Fan Yuhai, who was kneeling and begging for mercy. At this moment, Tuoya was already prepared to raise her blade. However, she felt that someone was walking toward her from behind. She habitually turned around, and when she saw who it was, she frowned and asked, "What? We're God. Are you going back on your words?" What a joke. I already said that you can punish this person however you want. Even if you let him go now, I won't say no. You can do whatever you want. Yang Qindong shook his head and then walked past the kneeling Fan Yuhai. This person was indeed capable, but unfortunately, his character was too bad. Moreover, he was born with a rebellious nature. He would definitely not put this kind of person in an important position. Yang Qindong walked away. Behind her was still Fan Yuhai's horse shouting. However, it quickly quieted down. Tuoya raised her blade and a large head flew into the air, ending the life of the so-called Jiaoji Kingdom's famous general. Fan Yuhai was killed just like that. Tuoya was finally no longer nervous. She squatted on the ground and cried bitterly. It was still Yang Qindong who walked over and handed over his handkerchief. Wipe it. The dead cannot be brought back to life. If Su Dekan's spirit is still alive after his death, he should be very gratified now. He took the handkerchief from Yang Qindong. Tuoya's cries became even louder. Yang Qindong didn't try to persuade her. This should be the last chance for a daughter to vent. Sometimes crying was better than holding it in. She cried for another quarter of an hour. When Tuoya's eyes were swollen, she stood up with the help of General Narisong. Then, the general's voice sounded by her ear. Princess, the Khan's vengeance has been avenged. Sahaba has also been defeated. The situation in the grasslands is gradually becoming clearer. I wonder if you have any thoughts. Then the general must have something to say. I'm listening. Tuoya, who had gradually regained her calmness, seemed to have matured a lot in that instant. Na Raizong began to stutter when he was asked this question. General Na, you are the person I trust the most now. If there's anything you want to say, just say it. Even if you say something wrong, I won't blame you because I know that you must have my best interests in mind. Tuoya said in a comforting manner. Baoyin had died in battle. Only Na Raizong had been by her side. Even when faced with Sahaba's threat, he didn't take a step back. This kind of person was still worthy of her trust. Na Raizong seemed to be moved by these words. He nodded heavily. Princess, since this is the case, I will speak the truth. I think you should think about your own future. The Khan is dead. If his spirit is in heaven, what he wants most is for the princess to live a happy life. He hopes that there won't be any more wars in the Mongolian grassland in the north of the desert. Right now, there's such an opportunity. We should seize it. Seize it? Then the general can just say it. Tuoya is waiting to be taught. A girl will eventually have to get married. Why don't the princess marry the Duke of Loyalty? With his protection, the war in the Gobi Desert will definitely end quickly. Only in this way can we win a big development. I still remember that the princess was very envious of the people of the grasslands in the beginner city a few days ago. Now is the opportunity. Na Raizong simply said everything. As a person who was highly valued by the Khan, and as a person who had received great kindness from the Khan, he felt that he had to say these words. This was the true repayment of the Khan's kindness. Wait! Tuoya didn't expect Na Raizong to say such words. For a moment, her mind wasn't clear enough. Then the general, what do you mean? Why must I marry the Duke of Loyalty? From the bottom of her heart, Tuoya didn't dislike Yang Chendong. Even if they were enemies, it was also because of the situation at that time. Not only that, she also liked Yang Chendong in her heart. However, because of her identity, she had been suppressing this feeling in the bottom of her heart. Now that Na Raizong suddenly pointed it out and even promised to be righteous, she didn't understand why it would be beneficial to the entire Gobi Desert once she followed the war god. Na Raizong made use of this opportunity to speak his mind. Princess, we all know the combat power of the mercenaries. If we were to fight with them, what do you think the chances of winning are? I'm afraid it's not even 50%. If we don't handle it well, the Gobi Desert Mongol branch will no longer exist in the grasslands. If we are not friends, we are enemies. For the sake of the people of the grassland tribes, we should also join forces with the mercenaries. The best way to join forces is through marriage. This way, we can ensure everyone's safety. Although this is a little unfair to the princess, but from now on, the people of the grasslands will definitely be grateful to you. Moreover, the Khan also had such thoughts and wishes before he died, so even the dead Khan had such thoughts. I need to think about it. Tuoya shook her head and didn't make a decision immediately. Although the girls of the grasslands were more straightforward, they would still blush when it came to their own marriage. Tuoya didn't reject at the first moment, which gave Na Raizong hope. Okay, since that's the case, I'll go and talk to the war god. Princess, please wait for the good news. After saying this, Na Raizong strode away. Looking at his leaving footsteps, Tuoya wanted to ask him to stop. However, she didn't know why she opened her mouth several times, but some words just couldn't come out. Yang Chendong had already walked into the main tent. He was waiting for Tuoya to thank him, and at the same time he wanted to tell her about the situation in the grasslands. Since the mercenaries were here and there was such an opportunity, it would be a great loss if he didn't get some benefits. According to his idea, this time he had to reach an agreement with Tuoya. In the future, the mercenaries would own the area east of the Inma River, and they wouldn't be allowed to cross the border. In this way, the crisis in the west of the beginning city would be completely resolved, and he would be free to do more things. After waiting for a long time, Tuoya didn't appear, but Na Raizong came to visit. He thought that maybe she was too sad, so this matter was the same as what Na Raizong said. He sat down and said to Yang Si, "Please invite Na Raizong." Na Raizong strode in and came in front of Yang Chendong. He first bowed to him with Mongolian etiquette, then raised his head to look at Yang Chendong and said loudly, "War god, our princess has decided to marry you. This is the best way for us to unite. What do you think?" Yang Chendong, who was drinking tea, spat out the tea in his mouth. Fortunately, the two of them were 5 meters apart, so he didn't have to worry about the tea splashing on others. However, Yang Chendong, who spat out the tea, was still frightened. He ignored his gaffe and asked, "General Na, what did you say just now? Can you say it again?" Yang Chendong couldn't be blamed for losing his composure. This was too different from what he had imagined. "War god, I said that in order for us to unite better, if you can marry our princess, many people will be happy to see it. What do you think?" Na Raizong didn't show any anger because of Yang Chendong's loss of composure. On the contrary, he was very happy. Just from this behavior alone, this war god did not have any malicious intentions towards the princess. Unlike the dead Fan Yuhai and the escaped Sahaba who both wanted to take the princess for themselves and make use of her, this time Yang Chendong really heard it clearly, but he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he fell into deep thought. With the death of Sud Khan, the only person left with the golden bloodline was Tuoya. Perhaps this bloodline was nothing in his eyes, but in the entire Gobi Mongol tribe, she enjoyed a very high status. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that whoever had Tuoya's support would have the orthodox status. At that time, anyone who dared to provoke them would be regarded as a rebellion. From this point of view, if he could take Tuoya as his wife, there would be a lot of benefits. Moreover, this girl was indeed very beautiful, especially her big breasts, which were very majestic. However, Yang Chendong had to admit this fact. Not only did he get a beauty, but he also had enough ingredients to stand on the table. Just from this point of view, marrying Tuoya would only bring him more harm than good. Many people had pursued such a thing, but they couldn't. Now, this big pie was thrown in front of Yang Qindong. It was impossible to say that he wasn't moved at all. In the end, it wasn't about the beauty, but it would be very helpful to his future career. Wasn't the reason why Yang Qindong captured Fan Yuhai and sent him to Tuoya to be dealt with? It was also for the safety of the west side of the beginning city. Once he married this girl, the situation in the west side would be stable. This would play a great role in promoting the development of Yang Xia's forces in the grassland. In fact, this move could save a lot of time and a lot of manpower. There were too many benefits, and it was impossible to refuse. Yang Qindong quickly made a decision in his heart. When he looked at Na Raizong, his expression became much more serious. Princess Tuoya is a good girl. It's naturally a blessing to be favored by her. But when Na Raizong heard Yang Qindong's words, a smile appeared on his face. He rushed over because he believed that Yang Qindong would agree with his idea. After all, this was a great thing. However, when he heard the word, but, he was still stunned. He was a little puzzled. Could it be that this war god would disagree? Chapter 875. Under Na Raizong's suspicious gaze, Yang Qindong continued, "However, I already have 5 wives, and there's still one that hasn't been married. If the princess marries me, she'll be my 7th wife. Wouldn't that be too unfair for her? If the princess is unwilling because of this, I won't be angry, nor will I attack you. As long as you're willing, we can still redraw the line and live in peace." War god, as far as I know, Yuhan men can divorce their wives. You can divorce your previous 6 wives. If you do that, impossible. Since I have married them, no matter what their identities are, they will always be my women. This will not change for the rest of my life. It's just like how if the princess marries me, nothing will change for the rest of my life. If that's what you're thinking, then I'm sorry, but please don't say such things in the future. Let's not talk about marriage. Let's talk about how to draw the line. Yang Qindong firmly interrupted Na Raizong. Although Tuoya's status was very noble, it was impossible for him to abandon his other 6 wives for the sake of this woman. Na Raizong could only sigh at Yang Qinjiang's decisiveness. "All right, I'll tell the princess your intentions. As for what to do, please give us some time." "All right, but please be quick. We've surrounded 40,000 soldiers, and they're waiting for us to give them an explanation." Although Yang Qindong knew that marriage was a serious matter, it wasn't a child's play. It needed time to consider, but the current conditions obviously didn't allow it. The mercenaries' prestige could suppress those people for a while, but no one knew what unforeseen events would happen after a long time. "We're God. Don't worry. I'll give you an answer after discussing it with the princess." Na Raizong also understood the situation and nodded before leaving the tent. Outside the tent, Tuoya's hands were tightly clenched together. She looked like an ordinary girl who had been frightened and was waiting for news. Although she knew that if she married the war god, Yang Qindong would benefit greatly and wouldn't be rejected, she still couldn't be at ease before she received a definite answer. After a moment of nervousness, she finally heard footsteps behind her. Her face turned even redder. "Princess, the situation has changed." Na Raizong appeared behind Tuoya. He didn't immediately congratulate her. Instead, he suddenly said such a sentence. "What's going on?" Tuoya ignored her feminine modesty and turned to ask, could it be that the war god didn't like her? Or did he never intend to keep the Mongols from the Gobi Desert and wanted to exterminate them? Facing the question, Na Raizong truthfully recounted what had happened in the big tent just now. When Tuoya heard that Yang Qindong had 6 wives and that she was only the 7th, her expression turned ugly. Na Raizong saw all the changes on Tuoya's face and concluded that the princess still liked the war god. Since that was the case, he coughed lightly to attract her attention and said, "Princess, in my opinion, this is a good thing. This proves that the war god values relationships." "Oh, what do you mean?" Tuoya asked in confusion. "Princess, think about it. With your status, if you say that you want to get married, who knows how many men will break their heads. When that time comes, even if they have a wife, I'm afraid that they will abandon her without hesitation. But is this kind of love reliable? If they can abandon other women for you, who knows if they won't do the same thing in the future? The war god knows this, but he still said the truth and didn't back down. Doesn't this mean that if you marry him, you won't have to worry about any accidents in this life? Isn't that a good thing? Na Raizong explained with a straight face. Ah, you can say that? Tuoya was shocked. Of course you can say that. In fact, with the war god's fame, whether it's on the grasslands or in the prosperous Great Ming dynasty, there should be countless women who want to marry him. But until now, he only has 6 wives. This shows that he has never been blind when it comes to choosing women. Now that he's telling us this in advance, it proves that he's magnanimous and honest. How can a man like this not be reliable? Not to mention, if he wanted to, how many women wouldn't he have? Why is there a need to restrain yourself like this? Na Raizong was still talking nonstop, and Tuoya's thoughts were also changed because of these words. It was as if the image of a perfect man had appeared in front of her. If she gave up because of this, it would definitely be the biggest mistake in her life. All right, I'll go see him. I want to have a chat with him. Tuoya finally made a decision. She didn't care about how many wives Yang Chundong had. She cared more about whether this man cared about her or not. Tuoya and Na Raizong arrived outside the tent together. Yang Si had been waiting for them and directly led them into the tent. At this moment, Yang Chundong was also sitting precariously, but for some reason he was more nervous than usual. After entering the tent, Na Raizong took the initiative to retreat to the side and stood together with Yang Si. He completely handed over the initiative to Tuoya. War God, are you really not willing to give up your wives for me? You should know that I have the bloodline of the Golden Family. If you marry me, the entire Mongol desert will listen to your words, listen to your orders, listen to your... Don't say any more. I won't give up on them. Yang Chundong directly interrupted Tuoya. Although it was a little heartless, it was also very decisive. This was his bottom line. He would not allow anyone to provoke him, even if there were great benefits in front of him. After being rejected on the spot, Tuoya's expression flashed with a hint of melancholy. Yang Chundong also sighed in his heart. He knew that it was very likely that things would fall through, so he simply gave up the idea of a marriage alliance. He wanted to use this opportunity to negotiate the border between the two sides. Just when he thought that the matter had come to an end, Tuoya suddenly said, "Okay, war god, your loyalty is admirable. I'm also moved. I'm willing to be your woman. For the future of the tribe, I'm also willing to cooperate with you. I'll listen to everything you say in the future, but I have one more condition." What condition? Yang Chundong, who was surprised, was no longer as calm as before when he encountered anything. He was really shocked by Tuoya's words. However, when he thought of the condition, he instinctively became more careful. "I want you to give me a city that's about the same size as the first city. It will be built here to benefit our Mongol desert tribe." Tuoya opened her mouth and said very seriously, "Build a city?" Yang Chundong was stunned by this request. Narasong took half a step forward and explained, "A while ago, I accompanied the princess to the first city and was attracted by the prosperity there. The Mongolian people living there were very happy. The princess said that she hoped that one day the Mongolian tribe in the north of the Gobi Desert would have a city like this, where the people could live freely. When danger comes, there would be a place to hide. That's right. This is my wish. It can also be considered as a dowry for you to marry me. Do you agree?" Tuoya looked at Yang Chundong with a serious expression. At this moment, her heart began to beat faster, as if she was afraid that Yang Chundong would shake his head. Although she also knew that building a city would require a lot of financial and material resources, she still made such a request. In her opinion, if the other party did not consider this condition, then perhaps he really did not like her. There was no need for her to stay here. To Tuoya and Na Raizong's surprise, Yang Chundong did not even think about it and nodded directly. "Okay, build a city. Build a city that's about the same size as the first city and name it North Desert City. But I also have a request. From now on, there are no Mongol desert tribe in the world. They will be unified under the jurisdiction of the mercenary army. If you agree, I will agree to your request. The reason why Yang Qindong agreed so readily was not because he was hot-headed, but because he originally had such an idea, but he thought that the time had not yet appeared. Since Tuoya took the initiative to mention it, he pushed the boat with the current and agreed. It was the best of both worlds. Okay, I agree. Tuoya was also straightforward. Knowing that her father was gone, if no one had the courage to stand up now, the entire Mongol desert tribe would be in a state of disunity. It was only a matter of time before they would be conquered. Since that was the case, it was better to give it to the mercenary army. At least they could protect their own people with their strength. Things went unexpectedly smoothly. Yang Qindong and Tuoya were also unexpectedly generous. The matter was settled. Next, Yang Qindong walked down from the chair and reached out to hold the hand of Tuoya, who was blushing. The two of them walked toward the place where the tribal leaders were still waiting for the news. It had been more than 2 hours since Tuoya had left, and these small leaders were already somewhat impatient. However, when they considered the fact that the nearby area was full of well-organized and murderous mercenaries, they had no choice but to suppress their temper. When there was finally a result, when they saw that Yang Qindong, who was known as the god of war, and Princess Tuoya were actually holding hands, many people's eyes began to widen infinitely. They really did not understand. How did things become like this after such a short time? How did this magic trick change? Princess Tuoya did not let everyone wait for long. In front of everyone, she announced her decision to marry Yang Qindong and what path the Mongol desert tribe would take in the future. Chapter 876. Tuoya was still announcing her decision as a member of the Golden Family. Yang Qindong, who was standing to the side, received the latest news from Yang Si and lightly nodded his head. Bring him in. Tuoya finally finished her speech. Then, her gaze naturally fell on Yang Qindong. Since she had chosen this person to be her husband, of course, he would take the lead from now on. Yang Qindong hugged Tuoya and smiled. Then, he looked at the tribe leaders who were staring at each other in shock and said, "The princess has already made her decision. In a few days I will take her as my legal wife. At that time, I welcome everyone to come to the beginning city to congratulate us. Of course, if anyone is not satisfied with this result, you can choose not to come. However, from now on, you will be viewed as my enemy. In the future, there will be no other path of survival in the Mongol region. Come, bring him in." Yang Qindong's threat was still ringing in everyone's ears when the tightly bound Sahaba was dragged in front of everyone by Badao Jiang and Peng Yu. This person, together with Fan Yuhai, forced Khan Sud to death. According to the law, he should be beheaded. Kill him. Yang Qindong merely shouted, and Yang Si, who was standing at the side, had already picked up a demon head blade. Soon after, the blade was raised and a head was chopped off. Sahaba, who had been caught alive by the light cavalry regiment, didn't even have the chance to say a word before he was beheaded on the spot, dying in front of the leaders of the other small tribes. This move of killing the chicken to scare the monkey, or even the monkey to scare the monkey, frightened many people. Originally, they wanted to voice out their objections. Why should the mercenaries occupy this place? Why should the Mongol tribe that had lasted for hundreds of years be swallowed by the mercenaries? However, when they saw Sahaba's death, many people wisely shut their mouths. The situation was stronger than the person. Now that the mercenaries belonged to the side of the general situation and had the support of Princess Tuoya, who could be his opponent? That's right, in terms of numbers, the Mongol army had 40,000 men, far more than the 20,000 mercenaries. However, there were too many factions among them, and it was impossible for them to be united. Furthermore, everyone was worried that if they jumped out first, they would die miserably and be targeted. Therefore, even though Sahaba had died right in front of them, not a single one of them dared to resist or protest. No one said anything. Yang Qindong's face was like a spring breeze as he said, "All right, since that's the case, I'll take it that you all agree to this decision. In order to express my desire to marry Princess Tuoya, I will soon build a city, North Desert City. at the place where the great battle just took place, Balsi and Tan, the temporary capital built at the end of the Yuan dynasty. At that time, as long as you are friendly with us, you will have the right to live there. At that time, you won't have to suffer alone in the yurt during the winter. Once the war comes, you won't have nowhere to hide. While looking at these Mongol people in front of him, Yang Qindong's lips curled into a smile, continuing, "Of course, building a city requires a lot of silver, and even more so a lot of manpower. Initial estimates suggest that the mercenaries will invest 15 million taels of silver, and the manpower needed will be close to 1 million people. If anyone wishes to work and earn money, feel free to come and sign up. Naturally, the small tribes that are friendly with us will take priority." Hong, the originally silent crowd, because of Yang Qindong's words, completely became noisy. Investing 15 million taels of silver, and the manpower needed would be around 1 million people. This was a real benefit. Apart from herding livestock, they also fought. Wasn't the reason for fighting over territory and resources. Now, the opportunity to earn money and change their lives was right in front of them. Not only that, they didn't have to risk their lives on the battlefield. Who wouldn't like such a good thing, and who would dare to reject it? Perhaps some small leader's brain was really muddled. If he rejected it, when he returned to his tribe, he would be drowned in saliva. Enemies weren't eternal, and neither were friends. Only benefits were eternal. At this moment, Yang Qindong's words were effective. The voices of opposition that should have appeared disappeared. On the contrary, everyone now wanted to get closer to Yang Qindong. Even if their status wasn't high enough, being able to have a good relationship with narration and the mercenaries was also a good thing. Whether it was because of their status or because they wanted to increase their prestige, Yang Qindong didn't say anything to the crowd. Instead, he held Tuoya's hand and left, leaving everything to Tiger's Mane, Hebe, and narration. Tuoya was in a good mood. Now, the Mongol tribe in Mo Bay needed peace and development, and all these could only be brought by Yang Qindong. As for the Mongol tribe in Mo Bay completely disappearing in the future, Tuoya didn't care anymore. As long as the people lived well, was the name really that important? Originally, they thought there would be a bloody battle, but they didn't expect it to end in such a good way. While the mercenaries admired the sixth young master, the construction of the city, especially the matter of who stayed to preside over the overall situation, became a problem that they needed to consider. Once they decided to stay here to build Mo Bay City, there was no doubt that they wouldn't be qualified to participate in the war for a short time. This was a very uncomfortable thing for the brave warriors. Therefore, when Tiger's Mane and Hebe talked to the senior officers, no one was willing to take the initiative to take this task. For this matter, that night, Tiger's Mane and Hebe had to disturb Yang Qindong, and Tuoya could only reluctantly leave the main tent. The knot in her heart was finally untied. From the moment Tuoya made the decision, she regarded herself as Yang Qindong's seventh wife. Of course, there was the necessary restraint. Before the marriage, she wouldn't be too close to Yang Qindong, but it was always a good thing to stay a little longer. In the big tent, there were only 4 people left: Yang Qindong, Yang Si, Tiger's Mane, and Hebe. He casually pointed to the chairs in front of him. "You've all been tired for a day, sit down." After thanking him, Tiger's Mane and Hebe sat down separately. Only Yang Si didn't. Instead, he poured tea for everyone. He was very clear about his position. He was a servant of the Yang family, now, in the future, and forever. As long as the master was here, he didn't have the qualification to sit down. How is it? Those people are still honest, right? Taking the steaming hot tea from Yang Si, Yang Qindong asked with a smile. Honest, they can't be any more honest. With such great benefits in front of them, how could they not be honest? Tiger's Mane chuckled. Well, it turns out that benefits always come first. This is far more powerful than any powerful force. Of course, wealth also needs enough strength to protect it. By the way, who will stay here next? Have the 2 of you decided? Yang Qindong chuckled. This was originally within his expectations. With such great benefits, if anyone still objected, then they really had to be kicked in the head by a donkey. At the mention of this issue, The smiles on Tiger's Mane and He Bee's faces disappeared. They had come precisely for this matter. According to the sixth young master's intention, the people who stayed here to build the city would definitely be selected from the first army. Who would be selected and who would not be selected, and whether the selected people would agree or not, this was very troublesome. Although it was the duty of a soldier to obey orders, if the order was directly given without considering the individual's wishes, then the task would not be completed very well. When the time came and it really delayed the important matter, then it would be their fault. Young master, regarding the selection of people, the deputy commander and I separately talked to the 3 division commanders, but it seems that they don't want to stay. Tiger's Mane knew that he had to speak at this time, although saying this would more or less make them seem incompetent, but the truth still had to be told. Oh, there is such a thing. Yang Chendong frowned. He could understand the thoughts of the 3 division commanders. They all wanted to make a contribution and stay in North Desert City. Obviously this wish was not easy to achieve. Yang Si, go and find the 3 division commanders. Although Yang Chendong could make the decision, he still wanted to see the 3 division commanders before making a decision. Yang Si agreed and left. Yang Chendong looked at Tiger's Mane and He Bee and said, "This is actually not a bad thing. It proves that the officers all want to make a contribution on the battlefield. This is a manifestation of high morale." Yes, yes. Tiger's Mane and He Bee nodded repeatedly in agreement. After a while, the Independent Division Commander Xian Honghai, the Tatar Division Commander Su He, and the Recruit Division Commander Lu Zhua all came to the main tent. The 3 of them did not have a seat, so they just stood in front of Yang Chendong. The 3 of them stood there with different expressions. Xian Honghai had a conflicted expression. Su He had a straight face and looked up, ignoring everyone's gaze. Even when Yang Chendong's gaze fell on him, he still did not move. Lu Zhua's gaze was somewhat evasive, not daring to look directly at Yang Chendong. Clearly, the 3 of them all knew what they were going to talk about this time. Speaking of which, staying here to build North Desert City was a huge task. At the very least, it was not an ordinary identity that could suppress the situation. In the entire new army, other than the commander and deputy commander, they could only choose from these 3 division commanders. Yang Chendong's gaze carefully wandered over the 3 of them. Then he nodded and said, "I think you all know why I, the young master, called you here. Then let's not beat around the bush. One of you 3 needs to stay here to be responsible for the safety of North Desert City. Which one of you is willing to take on this responsibility?" The words were asked by Yang Chendong. No matter how unwilling the 3 of them were in their hearts, they had to answer at this moment. The Tatar Division Commander Su He was the first to speak. "Sixth young master, I do not want to stay. I am more willing to go to war with the 6th young master." Chapter 877. It was very straightforward and decisive. Could be seen that Su He had made up her mind. Yang Chendong couldn't say anything to blame him. Instead, he looked at the other 2 with a questioning gaze. Recruit Division Leader Lu Zhua finally opened his mouth under the scrutiny. "Sixth young master, I don't want to stay either. I still want to learn more about war. If there's an opportunity like this in the future, I might choose to stay, but now..." Lu Zhua rejected him in a tactful manner. He was giving Yang Chendong face. However, it was hard to express his unwillingness to stay. It wasn't clear whether Yang Chendong was angry or not. After saying that word, his gaze fell on the last person, Xian Honghai. Xian Honghai was a person who handled matters calmly and had good personal ability. This was also the reason why Tiger's Mane had taken a fancy to him and transferred him to be the deputy division leader of an independent division. Reality proved that this decision was correct. When Tiger's Mane didn't have time to manage the army, this person took on most of the responsibilities and never caused any major problems. Therefore, when Tiger's Mane was promoted by 1 rank, he was also promoted by half a rank and became a division leader. He was the kind of person who was lucky and had a prosperous career. Now, he didn't express his opinion. Therefore, when Yang Chendong's gaze fell on him, he hesitated even more. In the end, he sighed in his heart and said, "If that's the case, sixth young master, I'll stay." Xian Honghai, who had previously rejected him, actually agreed. This made Tiger's Mane and Shibi, who were sitting there, look suspicious. Yang Chundong smiled and asked curiously, "You're really willing to stay? Don't you know that if you stay here, there won't be any major battles in the short term? You won't have a chance to perform on the battlefield." I know. However, I got this position because I got it easy. This time I have a chance to stabilize myself. Maybe I can use this opportunity to train my soldiers. Xian Honghai had a smile on his face, but there was a hint of bitterness in his laughter. There was nothing he could do about it. Su He and Lu Jue had already expressed their opinions. Now he was the only candidate left. If he didn't agree, wouldn't that make things difficult for the sixth young master? Thinking that everything he had now was given to him by the sixth young master, he couldn't do such a thing. He could only bite the bullet. Okay. Xian Honghai agreed, but no matter what kind of thoughts and intentions he had, at least someone had taken the initiative to volunteer. Yang Chundong nodded with satisfaction. Even so, from now on, the independent division would not be under the leadership of the new First Army. It would become the independent division that guarded the Mabe dynasty. The commander would be Xian Honghai, and the deputy commander would be Narasong. The Tatar division of the new First Army will be expanded from the original 10 battalions to 20 battalions. The new recruit division will be expanded from the original 15 battalions to 20 battalions. The immediate regiment will be expanded from the original 5 battalions to 10 battalions. The light cavalry regiment will be expanded from the original 5 battalions to 20 battalions and 2 immediate companies. The reconnaissance battalion will be expanded from the original 5 battalions to 4 battalions. Considering that the heavy equipment is still being built, the number of the heavy cavalry regiment will remain unchanged. So, I calculate that the number of the new First Army will be increased from the original 24,800 people to 27,200 people now, which is an increase of more than 2,000 people. Hee. Listening to Yang Chindong's arrangement, Tiger's Mane, Shibi, and others all laughed, especially Su Mang and Lu Jue. The number of people they brought with them had increased from the original 6,100 to the current 8,100, which meant that the strength of the new First Army had increased a lot. However, such laughter did not last long. Then, with another sentence from Yang Chundong, everyone was stunned. The independent division also needs to be expanded. The required personnel will be selected from the Mongolian tribes in the Mabe dynasty. The specific number of people recruited is temporarily set as 10 regiments and 1 regiment with 5 battalions, which is 20,000 people in total. Originally, Xian Honghai only led 6,000 soldiers per person. Now, it suddenly increased to 20,000 people, which was an increase of more than 3 times. If they worked hard, they would catch up with the number of the new First Army. How could it not be surprising? But after the surprise, everyone knew that this was originally what Yang Chundong did, in order to compensate Xian Honghai for taking the initiative to stay. For a while, everyone's face was a little gloomy. This was their 6th young master. If you were willing to make sacrifices, he would always try his best to compensate you. The current situation was a living example. They stayed for another 3 days. During this period, Yang Chundong met many small leaders of the Mongolian tribes in the Mabe dynasty. In the face of enough benefits, everyone had a good talk with each other. They also approved the marriage between Yang Chundong and Infanta Tuoya. They all promised that they would go to the beginning city to congratulate them on the wedding. Yang Chundong also promised everyone that when he returned to the beginning city, the first batch of construction materials would be sent over. At that time, he would need everyone's support and so on. The beginning city was about 700 li away from the Inma River. In addition, the distance from the Inma River to the Mabe city was about 300 li. The total distance was more than 1,000 li. In between the two cities, there were also Wanda City, Guangwu Town, and other places. In this way, they were connected. This would play a great role in stimulating the economy of more Mongolian tribes and influencing more Mongolian people. This plan also allowed Yang Chundong to smoothly kick out the second leg on the grassland. The cities could communicate with each other and support each other. The foundation would also be more stable. Yang Chendong left the specific matters of the construction of the city to Yang Si. He let him take the lead and agreed that the lord of the beginning city, Yumian, would send more capable people to support. Yang Si, you have to remember that the construction of the Mabe city is very important. From now until it snows in winter, that is, about 5 months. I ask you to build the prototype of the Mabe city in this period of time. The 4 walls in the city must be built well. The warm houses in the city must also be built well. This is a process from scratch to something. There must be some difficulties in the middle, but it doesn't matter. The beginning city and Chichen city will give you the greatest support. Hundreds of thousands of people in the Mabe Mongolian tribe will also fully support you. Do I have the confidence to complete this work well? Yes, only if young master asks me to do something, I will do it. I will never turn back without orders. Yang Si said with a firm expression. Good, good. Yang Chendong patted Yang Si's shoulder happily. You just need to focus on building the city. The security work will be left to Xian Honghai and Na Raizong. I will arrange for people to take care of other things in the city later. You just need to grasp the general direction. Yang Si's identity was naturally not suitable to be the lord of any city. Yang Chendong had to return to the beginning city to decide on the candidate for the position of the lord of the city. But the city didn't wait for people. The construction of the city had to start first. By the way, although these large and small tribes have to stand on our side for the sake of their interests, they still have to be tested if they are not sincere. You must pay attention to your own safety. The matter is urgent. I will allow you to withdraw first. Young master, I don't want the scene under the Beiding Gate in the capital to happen again. When talking about that matter, Yang Si felt a burst of emotion. In order to save his life, the young master had actually given him a blood transfusion. Just based on this, how could he not sacrifice his life and give it his all? Young master, don't worry. Yang Si knows what to do. 3 days later, Yang Chendong finally left. Other than leaving behind the independent regiment, the rest of the army was brought back. Princess Tuoya also left with him. On the day they left, many small leaders of the tribes came to see them off. They were all brimming with smiles. Yang Chendong was also smiling the entire time. However, everyone knew that no one could tell how much sincerity there was under this smile. With the accompaniment of the army, the return journey was extremely smooth. When they returned to the Yang residence in the beginning city, Yang Chendong immediately arranged for people to summon the lord of the city, Yumian, and the principal of the beginning city academy, Wang Si. Originally, Wang Si wanted to let Yang Chendong take on the role of the principal. However, he was still rejected. It was very difficult for him to have the time to go to the academy to teach everyone anything. Sometimes, he would not even go once for a long time. The position of the principal did not live up to its name. Therefore, he only took on the position of the honorary principal and taught everything. The 2 of them came to the Yang residence one after the other. First, the lord of the city, Yumian, reported the development of the beginning city to Yang Chendong. Reporting to the 6th young master, after our continuous efforts, the cement factory has now been set up here. Although we can't mass produce our own cement due to some practical reasons, we can still solve a part of our needs. Speaking of which, we have to thank the scientific and technical personnel sent by the academy. They have a very deep theoretical foundation. Not long after they came into contact with the practice, they put forward some suggestions for improvement. Now, it seems that they are very practical. Also, our grain fields have been developed to 300,000 mu. As long as the people living temporarily in the city are willing, they will be given some fertile land. They only need to pay us a tax of 30% according to the harvest. The army's grain fields are all managed by the logistics division. They are all young and strong people. It is a small matter for them to put in some effort. By the end of autumn, we will definitely have a big harvest. In order to ensure that the vegetables and grains can last longer, I have also followed the instructions of the 6th young master. We have built a large granary in the city and dug many cellars outside the city. After the evaluation by the professionals sent by the academy, there is no problem with the depth and width. It can serve as a refrigeration system to ensure that the vegetables can be used for a longer period of time. The 200,000 Han people and 30,000 educated youths sent by the Crimson City are already in place. Most of them have already adapted to the environment here and have begun to work. These people are all very good. As expected of the people sent by the Crimson City. They have already shown their skills in many jobs and proved their abilities. As Yu Mian reported one by one, Yang Chundong nodded his head. Good. As long as the problem of food is solved, there will be no problem with the people's hearts. Very good. Thank you for your hard work, City Lord Yu and Principal Wang. Chapter 878. Sixth Young Master. Thank you for your hard work. The two of them were naturally overjoyed after being praised. Taking this opportunity, Wang Si stood up and said, "There are more and more young people who want to apply for the academy. Among them, there are many Mongolian youths. Sixth Young Master, what do you think?" At the beginning of the academy, there was a rule that non-Chinese were not allowed to enter the academy. However, this was the grassland, and the majority of the population was Mongolian. Now that they saw that the people who came out of the academy were very respected and all of them were very capable, many of them wanted to study hard and change their lives. Now that he looked at it, that rule was no longer appropriate. Yes, this rule can be changed appropriately. If you want to study, you have to go through a background check first. At the same time, you have to be recommended by the senior personnel. If there is a problem, the recommendation will be responsible for the rest of your life. After the background check, you can go through the interview and assessment. Those who are smart and intelligent can be considered, but the proportion must be low. The total number of people can't exceed 10% of the academy's population. Yang Chundong thought for a while and made the change. The recommendation system of lifelong responsibility could ensure the loyalty of the people to the greatest extent. It was not just that, after the recommendation, if there was a problem, the recommendation would slap his head and say that he had misjudged the person. That was absolutely not allowed. In short, the bureaucratic idea would not work for Yang Chundong. Since you are paid well, you have to work hard. If you don't want to work hard, you can withdraw from the senior personnel and be an ordinary person. This rule seemed to be a little harsh, but only Yang Chundong knew that if he couldn't do this at the beginning, it would only become harder to lead the cadre. One day, it would not be impossible for the cadre to collapse. Okay. Wang Si nodded in agreement. Although it was only 10% of the grassland quota, it was enough to stop some people from talking. By the way, Sixth Young Master, some of the old students, and even the old teachers, they feel that they have learned a lot of theoretical knowledge. Now, their minds are filled with combining theory with practice. They want to do some practical work. What do you think? That's good. Combining theory with practice is the right way to go. In this case, I have something to tell the two of you. After the beginning of the city, I have decided to build another North Desert city 300 miles west of the Inma River, which is on the old site of the temporary capital built by Balsi and Tan at the end of the Yuan dynasty. In this way, it can correspond to the beginning of the city, and our power and influence will be greater. The construction of a new city is a complicated and tedious matter. There are many professionals needed, such as architects, the staff of the new city lord's mansion, market managers, the establishment of Mo Bay College, logistics, medical treatment, food supply, and the reclamation of fertile land like the first city. I have already checked that there is sufficient water, the land is not bad, and the place is large. It is feasible to get millions of mu of land. Do you have any suitable candidates? Regarding the issue of building North Desert City, although there were some rumors, there had never been an official document. Now that Yang Chundong had mentioned it, it was equivalent to giving everyone a confirmation. This was actually what Yu Mian and Wang Si wanted to find out. Now that the matter had been confirmed, there was no change in their expressions. Obviously, they had made some preparations. Yu Mian was the first to speak. Sixth Young Master. But how big is North Desert City? Is it the same as the beginning city? Naturally, it can't be the same as the beginning city. Whether it is its geographical location or as the first city on the grassland, the role and political status of the beginning city are incomparable to other cities. Of course, this doesn't mean that the area it occupies will be smaller, but its political status will be lower. As for the area of the city, I think it can be bigger. After all, there are hundreds of thousands of people from the Northeast Mongolian tribe. In this regard, the beginning city can't compare. Hearing this, Yumian had an idea in his heart. As long as the status was not the same as the beginning city was still the big brother. Some of the management personnel there could be transferred from the beginning city. It was not considered overstepping his authority. Alright, if that's the case, the city lord's mansion can send out 100 management personnel. They all started from the bottom and worked their way up step by step. In the past year, they have fully demonstrated their abilities. There are many good seedlings among them, especially my Deputy City Lord Mao Xiang, who is a very capable person. Mao Xiang. Yang Qindong nodded after hearing this. He had seen this person many times and heard more about his story. He was born a Han Chinese and had once been a scholar. However, because of the war in the place where he was brought to Crimson City by Leng Song, who had gone to the south of the Great Ming Dynasty, which had not been divided at that time. This person was actually interested in Lung Feng and worked hard to exercise his body. He failed the first assessment but succeeded the second time. Unexpectedly, he was then chosen by the new city lord of Crimson City, Yu Qian, and transferred to the city lord's mansion to work. After that, he followed Yumian to the beginning city and performed very well. Thinking about it, if his performance was mediocre, how could Yumian stand out to recommend him? One had to know that this recommendation was lifelong. In other words, if there was a problem with Mao Xiang in the future, Yumian would have to take responsibility. Originally, Yang Chendong wanted Yumian to recommend a city lord. It was impossible for Crimson City to recommend every talent. The climate and customs of the two places were different. The recommended person would have to adapt for a period of time. This was not conducive to North Desert City, which was eager to start work. Now that Yumian had taken the initiative to recommend him, Yang Chendong nodded. Okay, let me come over later. I will meet him. This meant that there was a chance. Yumian immediately said that he would do it when he returned. Now that there was a candidate for the city lord, Wang Si was unwilling to give in. He immediately proposed a candidate for the North Desert City Academy. There was no doubt that these two were promoting their own people in order to expand their speaking rights. It was still the same saying, where there were people, there would be conflicts. This was something that even Yang Chendong could not stop. He only wanted these recommended candidates to be suitable. As for some private conflicts, as long as it did not affect the overall situation in work, he would not casually intervene. Just like how he treated Yumian's candidate, Yang Chendong said that he also wanted to meet the candidate recommended by Wang Si. The matter was basically settled like this. Then, as the city lord, Yumian reported some practical materials that could support the construction of North Desert City. On this point, he did not mean to hide it. North Desert City was a lower political treatment than the beginning city. The stronger it was, the happier Yumian would be. Not long after meeting Yumian and Wang Si, Yang Chendong summoned the director of the security bureau stationed in the beginning city, Feng Liang. He expressed his worries about the North Desert region and requested to immediately build a public branch of the security bureau there. It was initially designated as a group. In the future, after the construction of the city had been completed and after work achievements, he could consider to be promoted to deputy director. He still had to accept the leadership of Feng Liang. Mao Xiang and the others were then met by Yang Chendong one by one. They talked about some practical work and future plans. These people came prepared and already had a series of plans in their hearts. In Yang Chendong's heart, he was quite satisfied. With the group in place, the next step was the mobilization of personnel and the transportation of materials. As a result, the construction of North Desert City officially began. With the full support of the various tribes in North Desert, it was done in a hurry. At the same time, preparations were also made for Yang Chendong and Tuoya's wedding. According to Princess Tuoya's intentions, she was in a hurry to get married, especially when she knew that the 5 wives of the war god had yet to give birth to a child. She wanted to take the lead even more, so she found someone to look at the date in private. It was set to be the 1st of the 7th month, more than 20 days later, for her wedding with Yang Chendong in the origin city. In order to expand the influence this time, Tuoya personally asked for instructions from Yang Chendong. When the news was released, she also claimed that on that day, the war god would be established with the title of Heaven Khan and completely inherit the ruling power of the entire North Desert Mongol tribe. When the news came out, all the forces in this area were shocked. First of all, the small leaders of the North Desert Mongol tribe. Although the title of Heaven Khan was not discussed with them before, it made them unhappy. However, considering the practical benefits in front of them, the construction of North Desert City had already begun. The workers here were all paid daily. The shining silver fell into the hands of the people of the tribe just like that. They had already won a large number of people's hearts. Even if they wanted to come out and stop it now, it was impossible, so they could only let it go. Not only that, on July 1st, they also had to consider going to the beginning city and take out their gifts to show their loyalty. At the same time, Shi Wanshan, who was currently in Talu City, also received the news. He was currently in charge of the Xian residence and the commander of the capital department of Wanquan. In his study, he sat quietly for a long time. Yang Chendong was actually going to receive the title of Heaven Khan, and at the same time take over the entire North Desert Mongol tribe. Because his wife was Princess Tuoya, their children would have the golden bloodline of the Mongol tribe. One could imagine their appeal in the future. All these things made him very anxious. The more Yang Chendong's power increased, the greater the pressure on Baiming. It could be imagined that if this kind of power was allowed to grow, it was likely that in the near future, a powerful enemy would appear in Baiming. Unfortunately, Baiming's imperial court seemed to have chosen to turn a blind eye to this situation. The new army that the imperial court was currently training was prepared to unify the great Ming dynasty. They were preparing to attack the southern Ming dynasty. This was the policy of the higher-ups. Shi Wanshan's words carried little weight. The only thing he could do was to be on good terms with Yang Chendong as much as possible and maintain the normal situation in the northwest. Shi Wanshan quickly made a decision. He would submit a memorial to the imperial court to ask if he could represent Baiming in congratulating the Duke of Zhongdan on his wedding. Since he could not fight, he could only think of a way to be on good terms with him. Chapter 879. Unlike the Mongolian tribe and Shi Wanshan, who had no choice but to express goodwill, there were also the Sanbur province and Jingzhou province south of Tulu City. They were all under the banner of the great Khan of Wara. After receiving the news, they immediately sent the news out. Although they could barely protect themselves with their forces and did not want to provoke the mercenaries and the powerful god of war now, the other party wanted to be conferred the title of Heaven Khan. In history, only a few people like Emperor Taizong of Tang, Li Shimin, and Genghis Khan could enjoy the title. Now that Yang Chendong wanted to take it for himself, they had no choice but to report such a big matter. As for what the higher-ups wanted to do, it was not something they could worry about. In the beginning city, Tuoya acted first and reported later and created the title of Heaven Khan. Yang Chendong did not know about it at the first moment. If Yang Chendong was the Heaven Khan, then once he had a son with Tuoya, wouldn't he also have a high status? On this point, Tuoya had her own selfish motives. Yang Chendong was well aware of this point, but he did not point it out. Although this title could be said to be a tall tree attracting the wind and would bring unknown consequences and become the target of public criticism, he was not afraid or worried about the powerful mercenaries. All right, Heavenly Khan it is. And send a report to the madams in Chichen City and give a detailed introduction of the situation here. Yang Chendong stood under the moon in the small courtyard and said to the servant Yang Lu who was following beside him. In his eyes, the influence of a Heaven Khan was far less important than explaining to his madams. Yang Lu sighed at the young master's powerful thinking. After agreeing, he turned around and did it. The god of war, the Duke of Loyalty of the Great Ming, the messenger of Tengri Heaven, the future Heaven Khan of the grassland was going to marry the princess of the Golden Family. This news quickly made the beginning city boil with excitement. The people in the city who had benefited from it hung red lanterns in every house, and the entire street was cleaned up. They expressed their congratulations to Yang Qindong in this way. As the day approached, more and more people rushed to the beginning city to watch this grand ceremony. Among them was Chief Commander Shi Wanshan, who had received the imperial court's reply and had come to the beginning city to express his goodwill. Therefore, the inns in the city were overcrowded. Some people also took the opportunity to clean up their houses to entertain the guests. During this period, they made a small profit. Although the beginning city's city lord's mansion to collect taxes, compared to the profit, the people were still very happy. If there were happy people, there would be some people who were unhappy. For example, Tua Tua Buhua Buhua, who received the news. Yang Qindong's appearance changed history, and also changed the trajectory of some people's lives. Tua Tua Hua was one of them. Tua Tua Buhua's full name was Buer Tua Tua Buhua. He was betrayed by his younger brother Agar Dorji and defeated by Yeshen. However, he was still alive. Not only that, because Yeshen's main goal was to deal with the Baiming Datong prefecture, he had the opportunity to develop. Now, he had 30,000 elite cavalry and 50,000 ordinary cavalry. Previously, Hubo was his subordinate. He originally wanted to integrate the Tatar cavalry near Tulu city to strengthen his own strength. However, he did not expect that he would lose to the combination of the mercenaries and the Baiming army so quickly. Just as he was thinking about whether to take revenge immediately, the news of Yang Qindong marrying the princess of the Golden Family and becoming the Heaven Khan spread. This time, Tua Tua Buhua could not take it anymore. He immediately called Hubo and the other generals to discuss the matter of marching into the beginning city. The appearance of the beginning city had greatly affected the Tatar Empire's ruling position in this region. The fact that Yang Qindong wanted to become the Heaven Khan had directly affected his authority. Just these 2 points alone made them like fire and water. A battle was unavoidable. Within the huge yurt, Tua Buhua ordered Hubo and another general, Lakshan, to split into the left and right vanguards. They each brought 20,000 troops to head towards the beginning city. Menk was the lieutenant general, and he brought 30,000 elite cavalry and 10,000 Mongol cavalry to follow behind. They wanted to take down the beginning city in one battle and completely defeat the Heaven Khan. The war was just a means to continue the political appeal. Rather than saying that Tua Buhua hated Yang Qindong for calling himself the Heaven Khan, it was better to say that he took a fancy to the resources and geographical location of the beginning city. In the current beginning city, there were close to 300,000 civilians, out of which 230,000 had just come from Chichen City. Perhaps some of them would quickly rush over to North Desert City, but 300,000 civilians was still a number that could be guaranteed. The first city was huge and the city was bustling. When many goods from Chichen City arrived here, it became the largest trading base in the grassland. As long as one had money, one could buy many things that could not be bought outside, or even things that one did not dare to think about before. Because of this, it attracted the patronage of Northern Ming, Newer Gandusi, the nearby Mongolian merchants, and some merchants from Siberia in the northwest. It was rumored that just the number of transactions in the city each day was a shocking number. No matter who occupied this place, just by collecting taxes, they would be able to obtain unimaginable benefits. Outside the city, there were nearly 300,000 mu of grain fields. Even during winter, there was a supply of vegetables. Outside the city, there was also the largest livestock farm in Mongolia. It was said that the mercenaries spent 3 million taels of silver to build it. There were more than 200,000 healthy horses and countless lambs. With so many resources, no matter who could hold them in their hands, they could quickly strengthen themselves and complete their goal of dominating the grasslands. Such a place naturally attracted the envy of countless people. If it weren't for the fact that the mercenaries were too powerful, they would have won many battles despite being outnumbered, causing the nearby forces to behave themselves. Otherwise, the flames of war would have been incessant every day. With so many benefits, it was not strange that Tua 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 had taken a fancy to this place. When his army was heading to the beginning city area, they even passed by the Hetao area where the Walla leader, Yeshen, was located, causing the other party to be on guard early on. However, Tua 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 did not care at all. It was as if he did not see his enemy, Yeshen. He actually passed by and did not even have the intention to fight. This was politics. There were only interests, no right or wrong, and it rarely involved hatred. Otherwise, Tuachuahua would have targeted Yeshen, who had stabbed him before, instead of the mercenary who was always on the defensive. The 80,000-strong army walked through countless places in the grassland, attracting the attention of various big and small forces. As the 80,000-strong cavalry moved, the focus of the entire grassland naturally fell on the first city area. Everyone knew that this would be a decisive battle between the old and new overlords. After this battle, the ownership of the Origin City region would be determined. After this battle, the victorious party would have a firm foothold in this region, and it would be difficult to shake it. In the beginning city, the intelligence of the Security Bureau had been sent here earlier. The news of Tua leading 80,000-strong cavalry to the beginning city had spread to everyone in the city. Shi Wanshan, who was staying in the guest house at the beginning of the city, also heard the news. Then he sent people to inquire about the reactions of the people in the city. This would play an extremely important role in his analysis of the victory or defeat of this battle. The people he sent out quickly replied. Unfortunately, the news they brought back made Shi Wanshan very disappointed. In the entire city, there was not the slightest panic on the faces of the people. Everyone was doing what they were supposed to do. It seemed that no one took Tuo's 80,000-strong cavalry seriously. Or perhaps they had already experienced a lot. At the beginning, there were 50,000-strong cavalry from the Agador tribe. Then there were 40,000-strong cavalry from the Huboer tribe, 10,000 infantrymen from the Northern Desert tribe. There were also tens of thousands of people from the Northern Desert Tribe Alliance. Each of them was aggressive when they came, but it did not take long before they were defeated and fled. Many people did not even have the ability to escape and eventually lost their lives here. On the other hand, the more the mercenaries fought, the more powerful they became. Right now, it was only 80,000 steel cavalry. What did that amount to? So what if she couldn't get rid of it? In the past, the Tatar tribe was very powerful and even had the intention of unifying the grassland, but that was in the past after all. With the rise of the War of Wara, especially when Yeshen teamed up with Agador to take down Tuabuhua, the invincible aura around him had long since disappeared, and everyone was no longer afraid of him. According to the report of the spies sent out, there was not the slightest bit of chaos in the entire Origin City because of this news. If one had to say who was influential, it would be the adult men among the common people. They longed for war because only then would they have the opportunity to join the army. It should be known that the treatment of mercenaries in the entire prairie was second to none when compared to the Great Ming Dynasty. A soldier could support his entire family. This was not just a slogan, but a reality. If one could achieve military merits in battle and become an officer, their treatment would be even better. Even if they were unfortunate enough to die in battle, the compensation given to them would be an astronomical sum. In the past, when they fought for the other Mongolian tribes, they would dig a hole and bury them whenever they died. Some would even set fire to their graves. Their families would also be bullied or become slaves because of this. The attitude of the mercenaries towards Junlai was many times better. It was precisely because the mercenaries treated their soldiers so well that it affected the nearby Mongolian tribes. They were all fighting on horseback, but the treatment was so different. Many people wanted to be treated the same. In the end, the leaders of the tribes could only watch as their cavalry left them and joined the powerful mercenary family. Chapter 880. Listening to the news brought back by the spy, Shi Wanshan and Ning Wenfeng, who was traveling with him, both had sighing expressions on their faces. Looking at the treatment of the mercenaries and the treatment of the Baiming soldiers, it was not an exaggeration to say that the difference was like heaven and earth. The Xian mansion was slightly better. At least, Shi Wanshan did not deduct too much from the soldiers' wages. Most of the soldiers were still able to live a good life. Compared to some other places, the army was still mainly military households. Every year, they would only be given a small amount of land, and they would only collect less rent. They could not even see a fight for their wages, so why would they have to risk their lives during a war? Different people have different lives. This kind of army is far from something we can defeat, unless... Ning Wenfeng sighed. Unless what? Shi Wanshan asked with a glimmer of hope. Unless the mercenaries have no money and are unable to support such a huge military expenditure. Then the army may fall into chaos without fighting, and that will be our chance. It's just that the financial resources of the mercenaries. Sigh. When Ning Wenfeng said this, he sighed. There were some things that he could only think about. Not to mention other things, just based on the income from the greenhouses in the winter of the first city, who knew how much money they could earn from the fresh vegetables they sold. Shi Wanshan had thought of imitating this before, but where the greenhouses came from and how much money they would need to make them were big problems. More importantly, once these greenhouses were really made, the income would belong to the officials of the Beiming Imperial Court before the Shen Mansion and the Wan'al Department could think about it. If that was the case, wouldn't it be making a wedding dress for others? No one was willing to do something that did not bring them any benefits. Shi Wanshan could only dismiss this idea. Now that he heard Ning Wenfeng say that unless the mercenaries had financial problems, perhaps their opportunity would appear. He shook his head and said, "This problem will not appear for the time being. I'm afraid you already know that the mercenaries have a large military base on Ryukyu Island. I think the development there is far beyond our imagination. How much money can be made from the things produced there is not something you or I can imagine." With the arrival of 200,000 Han people and 30,000 educated youths in the first city, the problem of the Chichen city was no longer a secret. Some legends about it could be heard on the streets and alleys. For example, there was an electric light that could shine at night as if it was daytime. It was something that people who had never been there could not imagine. The news was leaked, and there was nothing they could do about it. After all, there were 200,000 people, and no one could guarantee that they were all people who kept secrets. In addition to the temptation of spies from various parties, the news was quickly spread out. Regarding this matter, Director Feng Liang first caught a few people. After realizing that it was useless, he asked for instructions from Yang Qindong. Then, the Security Bureau began to release all kinds of news. For example, there was an immortal's aura above Chichen City, which supported the city during the day and night. For example, there was gold and silver placed on the streets of Chichen City, but no one went to pick them up. There was also news that the mercenaries' barracks in the city were about to set up cannons, but there was no space for them. Some people were simply squeezed into the sea and so on. In short, there was all kinds of news. It became more and more mysterious, and more unbelievable. In the end, other than learning that the mercenaries' headquarters might be built on Ryukyu Island, there was not a single piece of useful news. Shi Wanshan sighed. Ning Wenfeng also could not think of any good ideas. The two of them stared at each other, sighing that they were born at the wrong time. They even faintly worried about Beiming's future. A few streets away from the guest house, the Yang Mansion, as the most mysterious and most respected existence in the beginning city, was also holding a meeting at this moment. They were discussing how to fight against Tuachuo Huahua's 80,000 troops. Bandits, they're all bandits. One of the participants, beginning city's city Lord Yuqian, said angrily. It was no wonder that he was so angry. This time, Tuachuo Huahua personally led an army here. He even brought the elite of the Tatar cavalry. On the surface, it seemed that he was dissatisfied with the sixth young master's performance of being conferred the title of Heavenly Khan. But in fact, it was just an excuse for him to occupy this place by force. Everything that beginning city had now did not come from the wind. It was built with the efforts of countless people and a huge amount of money. Even now, it seemed that there were many ways to earn income in beginning city, such as business tax, local tax, house rent, greenhouse vegetables, large horse and sheep farms, and so on. In fact, there was still a huge difference compared to the investment. According to the sixth young master's earliest plan, it was already very good to be able to break even within 3 years. This was also because beginning city was the first big city on the grassland and had many innate conditions. Once the number of cities increased, there would be some impact on each other. At that time, if one wanted to build a city to break even or even start to make money, it would probably take 5 years. So much money and effort had been invested. Now that beginning city's situation had begun to improve and prosper, there were immediately people who had ideas about it. It was no wonder that the bookish Yu Mian would be so angry. He had always treated beginning city as his own child. Yes, they've taken a fancy to beginning city's position and various resources. They started the war to plunder it. If they really occupy this place, I'm afraid it won't take long for this place to return to the desolate Alahumiki city of the past. Beginning City Academy's Dean Wang Si also chimed in. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and chuckled. Dean Wang, what are you laughing at? Yu Mian asked with a puzzled expression. Oh, it's nothing. I heard that there's another reason why Tuachuo Buhua wants to enter Beginning City. It's said that the sixth young master is disrespectful to Genghis Khan. They said that he once used a poem to say that Genghis Khan, the prodigy of the generation, only knew how to shoot a big eagle with a bow. They said that this was the sixth young master's metaphor that their ancestor only knew how to shoot birds with a bow. Ahaha! Ha ha ha! At this point, Wang Si could no longer control himself. He could not help but hold his stomach and laugh out loud in such a serious meeting. Not only him, but many people in the meeting also laughed at this moment. The original meaning of this was that the sixth young master said that Genghis Khan was brave but not astute. However, it was interpreted this way. However, it did not seem to be wrong on the surface. Yang Qindong, who was sitting at the head of the table, also chuckled. Then he gently raised his right arm. Immediately, the meeting became incomparably quiet. All right, there's no need to talk about robbers. I've said long ago that in this world, sometimes it's useless to reason. In the end, it still depends on who has the biggest fist. That's the hard truth. As the saying goes, we'll deal with whatever comes our way. Since Tuachuo Buhua wants to court death, we'll fulfill their wish. Tiger's Mane, how's the training of the new army going? Tiger's Mane, who was the only one with the rank of Major General, stood up. Young Master, the situation is very good. The general trend is irresistible. Nowadays, there are too many young men from the grasslands who want to join the mercenary army. This is where the pressure lies. It's not easy to join the army and occupy a spot. In order not to lose it, all the soldiers are working hard to train. No one dares to be lazy, for fear of being squeezed out by others. Good, it's best to be able to train independently. Only if you're truly willing can the trained army be a strong iron army and invincible army. Yang Qindong nodded in satisfaction after hearing this. Then, he looked at Beta Persei on the other side and asked, how's the logistics division? How many recruits are training now? How many captives can be sent to the battlefield immediately? How many reserve soldiers are available? Young Master, the logistics division now has 10,000 recruits training. In half a month, the first stage will basically be over. In another month, most of the training procedures will be completed and they can be considered to officially enter the army. There are 15,000 captives, all of whom are the kind who can fight on the battlefield at any time. In the reserve, there are 10,000 young men from the grasslands. Usually, they mainly focus on learning Chinese and writing. At the same time, they are also responsible for reclaiming grain fields and doing construction work in the city. This is also a way to train their brain and physical strength. Once they pass the initial assessment, they can transfer to the recruit area for training at any time and wait for the opportunity to add to the army. Well, 35,000 people. That's not a small number. Yang Qindong was also quite satisfied with the logistics division's work. Logically speaking, as long as he was willing, he could form another army now. However, considering the financial pressure, he gave up this idea. The treatment of mercenary soldiers was very high, even a little too high. Once the number of troops was too high, the pressure on the city lord's mansion would increase. This was not in line with Yang Qindong's initial requirements of controlling the army with one hand and controlling the economy with the other. Okay, don't recruit new soldiers for the time being. After this battle, we'll replenish according to the actual situation. Yang Qindong ordered Beta Persei, then looked at the others and said, just last night, Yang Si, who is building Mabe City, sent a message saying that the Mongolian tribes in Mabe City are willing to contribute to the resistance of Tuachuo Buhua's provocation. They said that they can send 20,000 troops. They also said that they don't need to be paid, nor do they need to be equipped with horses and sabers. As long as they make military contributions on the battlefield, they will be rewarded according to the standards of mercenaries. If they are unfortunate enough to die in battle, they will still be compensated according to the mercenary standards. However, considering that their overall quality may be far inferior to the mercenaries, they only want half of our soldiers' compensation. Everyone, let's talk about your opinions. There's no need for that. As soon as Yang Chundong finished speaking, everyone at the meeting started to talk. Chapter 881. Other than Yu Mian, Wang Si, and Feng Liang, who held authority in certain areas, those who were qualified to participate in this meeting were the backbone of some divisions and regiments. Seeing that a big battle was about to be fought and the time to gain merit had arrived, it would be strange if they didn't like someone who suddenly wanted to take a share of the loot. All the officers were talking at once. Yang Chindong smiled but didn't say anything. He only held his tea and slowly drank it. His gaze would occasionally look at the faces of the other officers, observing their every move. Among these people, there was one person who had a very special status. He was Fan Yuhai's former subordinate, Lu Duo. In the battle, Fan Yuhai and Zhang Meng had both died, leaving only Lu Duo behind. It had to be said that this person was also a staunch person. He tried to commit suicide several times, but was always found and saved under the special protection of the mercenaries. After this matter was reported to Yang Chindong, the two of them had a long talk. Lu Duo, I know you hate me and don't want to serve in the mercenary army, but I think you must be more curious about why Fan Yuhai lost to me. I'll give you a chance now. You cannot be considered a mercenary, but some meetings allow people to participate. You can watch all of this as a third party and find your answer. If one day you find your answer and still want to seek death, then I won't stop you. How about it? After this conversation, Lu Duo appeared in this meeting with a transcendent status. He had seen everyone's performance just now. When he heard that someone wanted to gain merit, although he didn't say anything, he agreed in his heart. Since the battle was imminent and the military merits were in front of him, why would he let others do it? This was equivalent to snatching meat from his bowl. If he was a regiment commander or even a division commander, he would definitely oppose it. Not only did he think this way, but he also thought that Yang Chundong also had the same thoughts. He even guessed why this person would bring up this matter. He must be using this to tell everyone that there were many troops who wanted to participate in the battle. If they didn't perform well on the battlefield, then they couldn't blame others for snatching their merits. This was just a way to motivate the generals and soldiers. In the past, Fan Yuhai had often used it, so it was not surprising. Lu Duo also did not think that Yang Chindong would be more skilled in this aspect, much better than his former master. In the meeting, the generals were still talking at the same time. However, all of them expressed that it was enough to have them on the battlefield. As for the 20,000 Mongol soldiers, they should just forget about it. The benefits should not be given to outsiders, right? After a while, those who should have expressed their opinions had all expressed their opinions. Even the Tatar division commander, Su He, who rarely spoke, firmly said that they could fight this battle well. If they didn't have enough troops, they could use the logistics division's troops. There was no need for others to interfere. Soon, apart from Commander Tiger's Mane and Deputy Commander Shibi, the rest of the officers made their statements. Everyone is almost done talking. Why aren't Commander Hu and Deputy Commander Shi speaking? What do you think? Yang Chindong was very satisfied with the abilities of these two people. As they continued to grow, they had become more and more like high-ranking generals. They were not anxious when faced with problems, and they were calm and mature. The two people who were called looked at each other first. Then, Tiger's Mane, as the representative, smiled and said, "Young master, since you said so, you must have thought about the overall situation. We will listen to you." Good. Yang Chindong nodded heavily. Then, he looked at the audience and said, "I mean that we can agree to their request and allow them to send 20,000 people to participate in the battle." Sixth young master. Hearing Yang Qindong's decision, the officers all said with ugly expressions. Even Lu Duo, who was not wearing a military uniform and did not have any military rank, widened his eyes at this moment. He suddenly realized that he still didn't understand this loyal duke of the great Ming dynasty. Yang Qindong gestured for everyone to not be anxious. Then he said, "I understand what you mean and what you think. However, there is only one thing I want to say. That is, people will die in war. Although both sides are flesh and blood, the mercenaries are like my children. Of course, I will side with you. If we win this battle with too many casualties, that is not what I want. Since they have joined the mercenary group, that in itself is a kind of trust in us. Trust is easy to say, but it can only be barely achieved after countless efforts. Since they trust us, we should be responsible for their lives. If we can avoid death, we should avoid death. If we can avoid death, we should avoid death. Therefore, the addition of these 20,000 people will greatly reduce the pressure on us. In some bloody battles, we can even let them fight. This can reduce our casualties to a minimum, and it can also tell others that it is not so easy to take advantage of us. What do you all think?" Allowing others to participate in the battle did mean that they had to share a part of the military merits. However, it was undeniable that they would also share a part of the danger. If the plan was meticulous, they might even share a large part of the danger. This was Yang Qindong's consideration for everyone. When these words were said in public, the people who had objected just now could not help but shut their mouths. This was for their own good. They could not refuse. When everyone looked at Yang Qindong, their eyes were filled with gratitude. Lu Duo finally understood Yang Qindong's meaning. He sighed in his heart. This person was indeed ruthless. Compared to him, Fan Yuhai was not as good. However, from another point of view, was his consideration wrong? This time, the people of the Mongol tribe in the desert wanted to take advantage of them. If they refused, it was inevitable that people would say that they were not impartial. However, they originally wanted to force Yang Qindong to give in. In the end, they were used. Who could be blamed for this? Of course, what made Lu Duo sigh was that Yang Qindong valued the lives of the soldiers. How could this kind of leader who sincerely thought for the soldiers not be respected? What if he could not be supported by others? When he looked at Yang Qindong, Lu Duo seemed to see a faint halo above his head. That was something that only people who achieved great things would have. In comparison, whether it was the angle of looking at the problem or the situation, Fan Yuhai lost by more than a level. Now, it seemed that they would lose and Yang Qindong would win. Everything seemed to be within reason. The meeting was still going on. In the end, 3 sets of plans were drawn up. Because they still didn't know how the Tatar cavalry was going to fight this battle, the plans could be changed at any time. However, it was undeniable that all the participants were convinced after listening to Yang Qindong's 3 sets of plans. The various calculations were in place and were made according to the character of the enemy's generals. It already included all kinds of possibilities. Military preparations had to be done. The matter of Yang Qindong marrying Princess Tuoya and conferring the title of Khan still had to be carried out. This matter was mainly handed over to Yumian, Wang Si, and the others to handle. According to the requirements, this ceremony had to be grand and had to have the effect of encouraging and unifying the people. The 1st of July quickly arrived under everyone's expectations. In the morning of this day, the entire first city was infected by the enthusiastic atmosphere. All the people in the city, regardless of age, walked to the streets and came to the largest central square in the city. There was also such a square in Chichen City. It could accommodate more than 300,000 people and the army. It had already become a kind of landmark building in Yangxia City. Princess Tuoya was already dressed up. She was wearing gold and silver accessories. It was estimated that the weight of these accessories was no less than 10 kilograms. It was so heavy that she felt like she could not lift her head. With the help of her maid Guna, after Fan Yuchi was defeated, Guna, who was imprisoned, was freed. She came to an extremely luxurious carriage. Then, she rushed to the central square with Yang Qindong, who was wearing a marshal's uniform. 2nd Madame Chao Yin, 4th Madame Lady Xiang, and 7th Madame Yang Nai had already arrived at the square. According to the two madams, they did not want to show their faces in public at this time. The main reason was that they did not want to steal the limelight from the seventh madam. However, Yang Qindong insisted that they come. He also used this matter to tell others that he would not forget his old love after marrying a new one. Similarly, when it came to military matters, he wouldn't forget about the old just because he used new people. At this moment, the square was already crowded. When Yang Qindong's carriage appeared, the square was even more jubilant. The sound of shouting the heavenly Khan shook the sky, could be heard clearly in every corner of the first city. The carriage stopped. Yang Qindong appeared in the crowd's line of sight, holding the hand of Tuoya, who was dressed in splendid clothes. He waved to everyone from time to time. For a moment, the waves of cheers were louder than the previous. At this moment, everyone was immersed in the warm atmosphere. Among the crowd, the spies of the Security Bureau were dispatched collectively. They appeared in the crowd and watched every place in the square at all times to ensure that they could counterattack immediately if there was any movement. Amidst the cheers of more than 200,000 people, Yang Qindong walked up to the viewing platform of the square. As he made a gesture, a loud bugle sounded, followed by a grand military parade. Groups of mercenaries in military green uniforms walked out from the side of the square and strode forward on the road in front of the square. During the war, one of the best ways to announce oneself was to parade. It could not only have the effect of inspiring and grand, but it could also have the effect of deterring the enemy. Sure enough, when the military parade began, the square was much quieter. Everyone's eyes were attracted by the mercenaries walking through the square. Even Wan Shishan, Ning Wenfeng, and the others were staring at the scene in front of them, as if they were going to miss every single moment. The first to appear was the Black Cavalry Guards. The uniform black armor, black mask, and the uniform warhorse armor gave everyone a strong sense of oppression when they appeared. Although there were only 100 people in total, the aura they revealed was not weaker than any army with thousands of men and horses. Chapter 882. The second person to walk over was the new army headquarters. Tiger's Mane, who was dressed in a general's uniform, led the way. The deputy commander and other military personnel followed behind him. Their appearance caused a burst of cheers in the square. After the military, the first group to appear was the Tatar division. After the expansion, they had 20 battalions. They appeared in formal attire and attracted a lot of shouts from the central square. The next group to appear was the recruit division. They received the most cheers because many of their relatives were the people of the origin city. With the help of their relatives, their momentum was naturally great. After the recruit division was the independent division. The division commander Xian Honghai and the deputy division commander Na Risong walked in front of the group. As the division commander, Xian Honghai had no chance to fight with Tua Buhua. Even if he came to attend the wedding ceremony this time, he still had to go back soon. In contrast, Na Risong was much more fortunate. He was lucky enough to stay and be the representative general of the Mongolian tribe in the north of the desert. He would fight the Tatar army together with the mercenaries. Their appearance attracted Yang Qindong and Tuoya, who were on the viewing platform, to wave at them. The fourth division to appear was the logistics group. They had too many people and it was impossible for all of them to appear. They only sent a part of the representatives, but they also won a lot of cheers. Especially when the propaganda group and the medical group walked through the square, it attracted a lot of attention from the Mongolian men. These two groups were mostly made up of female soldiers. Under the contrast of the military uniforms, it was the first time that the berets appeared in front of everyone. It was impossible for such a group to not attract attention. Especially the medical group, they were responsible for battlefield rescue. They were far from the propaganda group. Although the members were very beautiful, they could only be seen from afar. It was very difficult to get close to them. The medical group was different. They were responsible for treating the soldiers and the wounded on the battlefield. It was very easy to get close to them as long as they were sick. Because of this, many soldiers recently went to the medical group for various reasons. However, in reality, no one knew how many people were really sick. After the logistics group, the direct subordinate regiment, reconnaissance battalion, light cavalry regiment, heavy cavalry regiment, and other regimental units appeared. However, the most eye-catching unit was still the heavy cavalry unit. Although there were only 2,000 of them, their auras were extraordinary. When they walked on the square, they caused the ground to tremble. Their shining blades caused many Mongolian girls to scream, and the Mongolian men to feel their blood boil. In their eyes, these were the strongest existences. If they could join such a group, they would be proud for the rest of their lives. After these troops walked in, the next to enter was the 20,000 cavalry of the Mongol tribe. In comparison, regardless of whether it was military discipline, or imposing manner, they were all a bit weaker. Fortunately, Princess Tuoya was waving her hands at them from the viewing platform, giving them support. Only then did they not lose so much face. These 20,000 men were the 20,000 that the Mongol tribes had requested to join the battle. Originally, they had thought that they were here to split the benefits and show their faces. However, it seemed like their appearance had caused the atmosphere to become a little awkward. But no matter what, the fact that they were able to appear here was already a victory. They originally thought that the war god might not agree to them coming out to take advantage of the situation. However, they did not expect that the war god would agree so quickly. This allowed them to feel the war god's friendly attitude, and they were determined to perform well on the battlefield. After the Mongol tribe walked in, the last to enter was the ferocious tiger regiment. Different from the cavalry, this time they walked in. All of them carried the Type 95 on their shoulders and were equipped with shining blades, making it difficult for them not to attract attention. However, what was even more unexpected was that when the 3,200 men walked in front of the viewing platform, the leader, Xiaofeng, suddenly shouted, "Look to the right!" With this order, the ferocious tiger regiment soldiers who were walking in unison suddenly changed their pace. Then they raised their spears and stabbed. Their movements were neat and uniform. Under the sunlight, the shining bayonets drew a beautiful arc in front of the 200,000-plus spectators. This was a standard military parade, and only the real Lungfeng could perform this standard action. It was a pity that there was no military song to accompany it. However, the appearance of the Lungfeng ferocious tiger regiment still stirred up the atmosphere of the entire plaza, especially when they walked behind the 20,000 Mongol tribe cavalry. Compared to their laziness, the appearance of this neat group of soldiers stood out even more. The military parade lasted for nearly 6 hours, from morning to afternoon. As the ferocious tiger regiment marched out of the square, a few large balloons suddenly appeared in the sky. Countless flowers that had been prepared beforehand scattered down from the sky, giving people the feeling that divine flowers had descended from the heavens, or that fairies were scattering flowers. On the viewing platform, Tuoya was extremely excited. She hugged Yang Qindong's arm tightly and looked up at the sky in surprise. Yang Qindong's lips were constantly curved in a smile. Behind him, second Madame Qiao Yin and fourth Madame Xiang also had looks of envy on their faces. However, they knew that this marriage had great political significance. It was not something they could be envious of. Moreover, as long as their husband treated them well, the two of them would be very satisfied. When the commoners in the plaza saw the heavenly flowers, they were all excited and excited. Many old men knelt on the ground as their knees gave way. Then, they shouted, "Long live the heavenly Khan! Long live the heavenly Khan! Long live the Khan! Long live the Khan!" Very quickly, this chant spread to the entire plaza. The 200,000-plus commoners and the tens of thousands of soldiers in the parade all knelt on the ground and shouted loudly, expressing their excitement at this moment. Shi Wanshan and Ning Wenfeng watched this scene from the side of the viewing platform, their eyes flashing with deep worry. However, when they saw everyone kneeling on the ground, even the leaders of the Mongol tribes had no choice but to kneel on the ground and chant the slogan. The two of them standing there were extremely eye-catching. "Squat down." At the critical moment, Shi Wanshan reacted quickly. He was Baiming's minister, so naturally, he could not easily kneel to others. However, at this time, squatting was still possible. In this way, although they were somewhat unwilling, the two of them still squatted in the crowd. Although their knees did not touch the ground on the surface, there was no difference between them and the crowd. And this scene was captured by two students from the First City Academy who were good at photography. They had received the digital camera the day before yesterday. The two of them were amazed by this good thing that could completely freeze the image taken with a press of a button. No one knew where this thing came from, but it seemed that there were too many secrets that happened to the sixth young master. There were so many secrets that if he took out a plane that could fly now, everyone would not be too surprised other than exclaiming in admiration. In the crowd's loud cheers for the Khan, Yang Qindong and Tuoya walked down the viewing platform and went straight to the Yang mansion. The next thing to do was to hold a banquet. In the courtyard of the Yang mansion, there were already 10 tables of wine. Of course, this was for the high-level personnel. As for the others, they would be accompanied by other officials in the city lord's mansion, the first city guest house, and other places. A lively day would always come to an end. That night, all the guests walked out of the Yang mansion in satisfaction when they were drunk. Yang Qindong, who was still full of energy, also strode into his bridal chamber. There, Princess Tuoya was waiting for him, waiting for the happiest moment of his life to come. On the second day of the wedding ceremony, the guests began to leave one after another, and the parade troops also went to the front line one after another. They originally had their own missions, and if one looked carefully, they would notice that some of the troops that left the city were mainly heading toward the Saihan Mountain area, which was southeast of the first city. Just yesterday, before the ceremony was about to begin, the Security Bureau and the reconnaissance team, which was under Su Yunqing's command, sent news that the 20,000 cavalrymen under the Tatar army's right vanguard, Lakshan, had arrived at the foot of Saihan Mountain. They revealed that they wanted to capture this mountain and use it as their rear base to confront the mercenaries. According to the previous plan, the logistics division had originally sent out 6 battalions of more than 2,000 people to guard Saihan Mountain. However, because they had entered the city to participate in the parade, only 1 battalion was left to guard the mountain. Coincidentally, at this moment, the Tatar army appeared at the foot of the mountain. The troops that were leaving the city were rushing to support them. On the magnetite slope halfway up Saihan Mountain, General Lakshan was looking up at the peak of the mountain with a complacent expression. After receiving the order from Great Khan Tuachuabuhua to attack the first city, Lakshan rushed all the way here. He wanted to arrive before the great Ming dynasty's Zhongdan Duke's wedding and sabotage it. However, he was still late by a day. The enemies that obstructed them along the way were really troublesome, making it impossible for them to arrive at the first city on time. But it didn't matter. The Tatar spies left behind in this area brought him good news. There weren't many enemies in Mount Saihan that the mercenaries had taken down. There were only a few hundred of them, even if they were to take all of them into account. 20,000 versus a few hundred. This was an unequal battle. To Lakshan, it was like an appetizer before a big meal. He did not care about it at all. The facts also proved that the magnetite slope halfway up the mountain was taken down without much attack. Next, they only had to wait until they reached the peak of Saihan Mountain. Then, this place would be completely under their control. Report. A large number of mercenary reinforcements have been discovered at the foot of the mountain. When the news reached Lakshan's ears, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Good. They're pretty fast. Since this is the case, let's work together from the inside and the outside. Inform everyone not to rush to attack the mountain. Let the troops come up and immediately send someone to inform General Hubo to quickly move down the mountain. We need to work together from the inside and the outside to take down this wave of enemies. Chapter 883. The scout nodded and immediately went to pass down the order. Another Deputy General, Mu Chi, came up with a puzzled expression. General, why should we stop attacking the mountain? The enemy is here, so we should attack with all our might. There are people on the mountain, and we are now halfway up the mountain. This is very disadvantageous for us. Ha ha ha, what do you know? Lakshan had a smug look on his face when he said this. Mu Chi flattered and laughed. He took half a step forward and said, General, please enlighten us so that we can learn from you. Looking at Mu Chi's curious face, Lakshan's vanity was greatly satisfied. He laughed and said, "All right, seeing that you are so eager to learn, I will teach you a lesson today. Let me ask you, why did the mercenaries rush to our Saihan mountain so early in the morning?" "Well, it's probably because they know that there are mercenaries surrounded here, so they want to take this place back." Mu Qi answered with a straight to the point. "That's right. Then if we had already taken over the entire mountain, do you think they would still want to take it back?" Lakshan chuckled and patted Mu Qi's shoulder. "Let me tell you, war is a skill. Sometimes bravery alone is not enough. There are still many things to learn." Lakshan had already left, but Mu Qi was still deep in thought. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and shouted, "Ah, I know, the general intentionally left the mountain unattacked in order to lure the enemy's reinforcements. Only if there are mercenaries here would they have no choice but to come despite knowing the danger. That's right, the enemy on the mountain is the bait we used to catch the big fish. If we eat them now, the mercenaries won't fall for it. Ha ha ha. Now, we just have to wait for them to reach the foot of the mountain and wait for General Hubo to surround them. Then, we can eat the bait at any time and attack from both inside and outside to deal a heavy blow to the mercenaries." Lakshan, who was already a few meters away, laughed heartily and walked further and further away. He wanted to see how many reinforcements the mercenaries had. If there were too few, it wouldn't be enough for him to eat. At this moment, Hubo-Er's 20,000 soldiers were rushing over from the west of Saihan Mountain. Hubo-Er, who was riding on a horse, asked General Mu Run as she galloped, "Did Lakshan really take down Mount Saihan?" "Yes, the scouts they sent, as well as the gerfalcons in the sky, told us the same thing," Mu Rin answered with certainty. "Then are you sure that there's only one battalion of mercenaries on Saihan Mountain?" Hubo-Er asked worriedly. "I saw it clearly. Usually there are only 4 battalions on the mountain. Our brothers went to investigate before. This time, for the wedding of Duke Zhongdan, they sent 3 battalions to participate in the military parade. Now there is only 1 battalion left in the mountain." Mu Ren nodded again and said, "This Mount Saihan is such an important place. How could it change hands so easily? General Mu Ren, do you think this is another one of Duke Zhongdan's schemes?" Hubo-Er was still worried and continued to ask, "That shouldn't be the case. Our men just sent a report from the origin city. They said that Duke Zhongdan's main generals appeared during the military parade. If they were really prepared, then there should be at least 1 general guarding an important place like Mount Saihan." Mu Run replied while sighing in his heart. It seemed that his general was scared after the previous defeat. Otherwise, why would he be so careful? "Is that so? That's good, that's good." After asking a few questions and not finding any problems, Hubo-Er finally relaxed. She then said to a guard beside her, "Go and inform General Hu Lin of the vanguard. Tell him to speed up. As long as we report to him, even if the mercenaries have some tricks up their sleeves, it won't be that easy for them to take down our army of 40,000. Hubo-Er was very careful. As the saying goes, once bitten by a snake, twice shy. This was exactly what he meant. He was worried that Yang Qindong would play tricks again, so he wanted to be closer to Lakshan. That way, if the situation changed, he would be able to provide assistance. However, he did not know that this was exactly what his opponent did not want to see. On the battlefield, only by not letting the opponent feel comfortable would one feel comfortable. This was a principle that had not changed since the ancient times. As such, when Hubo-Er's troops wanted to get closer to Mount Saihan, they encountered more and more resistance. There were a total of 10,000 Mongol soldiers in this region. The vanguard general Hu Lin had already encountered many waves of enemies, ranging from a few hundred to a few thousand. Fortunately, the other party's combat strength was very ordinary, and most of the time they used arrows to attack from afar. Once he became serious and launched a charge, the other party would retreat again, as if they had no intention of tangling with them. It was also as if their combat strength was mediocre, and it was difficult for them to be a match. This situation was somewhat abnormal, so Hu Lin sent someone to report the situation to General Hubo-Er. Very quickly, he received a confirmation. "Don't worry about them. They just want to stop us from meeting up with General Lakshan." The more they do this, the faster we need to get to the foot of Mount Sihon. With this order, Hu Lin calmed down and ordered the vanguard to charge forward. When they met with obstructions, they would only send out a small group of cavalry to retaliate. As expected, even a small group of cavalry was able to repel the enemies. Hence, they continued to charge forward. When the sky was about to turn dark, they were already 20 li west of the foot of Mount Sihon. From here to the foot of the mountain it would only take an hour. The cavalry had been running for an entire day and were truly tired. After asking for instructions, Hu Lin ordered the troops to rest. In less than an hour, General Hu Bo-er and General Mu Ren arrived, and both sides met up. Good. Everyone is tired. Have a good rest. Tomorrow morning, we will coordinate with General Lakshan to attack the mercenaries. And we will have to trouble General Mu Ren to keep watch tonight. Hu Bo-er called all the generals over, and after a series of praises, he gave the order. Hu Bo-er's troops on the left had already reached the foot of the mountain. Halfway up the mountain, they could even see the white torches in their camp. This made Lakshan, who was guarding the mountain, calm down. Now that the situation had been formed, they only had to wait until the next morning to completely wipe out the 400 mercenaries guarding the mountain. Then, they would be able to launch an attack from the inside and deal a heavy blow to the mercenaries at the foot of the mountain. Haha, what undefeatable mercenaries! What dogs hit war gods! I think they are just SOSO. Lakshan laughed heartily, and under the praises of Mu Qi and the other generals, he returned to his tent to rest. Right now, he was just waiting for the moment he woke up to launch his counterattack. He wanted the world to see that the Ming dynasty's loyal and courageous people were not the only ones who knew how to fight. At the foot of the mountain, in the mercenary tent, Na Raizong was harshly scolding the small leaders of the Mongol tribes. What the hell are you guys doing? You said that you wanted to stop Hu Bo-er's troops, to prevent them from reaching the foot of the mountain so quickly. Now they are just 20 li away from us, and we are about to be pincered from both sides. How do we explain this? Facing Na Raizong's scouts, the small leaders lowered their heads and did not speak. This was something that could not be helped. Originally, they had thought that they could just follow behind the mercenaries and take advantage of the situation. On the other hand, it was not suitable for them to deal with the 20,000 Tatar cavalry. In truth, they could not do it anyway. A bunch of useless things. Because of your mistakes, we can only wait for tomorrow's bitter battle. When the time comes, no one is to call for retreat. This was all because of our poor progress. Na Raizong continued to roar in anger. All right, everyone has done their best. Hu Bo-er brought 20,000 cavalrymen. How could they be so easy to deal with? Everyone go and rest. There will be a bitter battle tomorrow. How can we not rest well? The deputy commander of the new army said like a good old man. Then, he sent those leaders out of the main tent with a smile on his face. After they left, Tiger's man stood up and said to Na Raizong, "How was it?" It's not that I didn't give them a chance, but that they did not know how to grasp it. What happens next, it's all up to me. This was what they had agreed upon. During the day, Na Raizong had volunteered to give the Mongol army a chance to perform. If they did not perform well, he would listen to Tiger's man's arrangements. Now that the truth was right in front of him, he had nothing to say. He nodded. I'm willing to accept my loss. From now on, we'll just listen to Commander Tiger's arrangements. Outside the main tent, a group of Mongol leaders walked out. Some of them had looks of dissatisfaction on their faces. Their forces were too spread out. Sometimes, a small tribe would only have a few hundred cavalrymen, while the bigger tribes would only have a few thousand. Asking such a small faction to fight the 20,000 Tatar cavalry was simply sending them to their deaths. However, there was one person who did not say anything from start to finish. He was one of the leaders of the Mongol army, Demutu. He seemed to have a lot on his mind. When he returned to his tent, he quickly wrote a note, recording everything that had happened in the main tent. He then took out his gerfalcon and walked out of the tent. Using the excuse that it was convenient, he went to a secluded place and released the gerfalcon into the air. Chapter 884. Demutu had another identity. He was a pawn that Tuachuobuhua had planted in the Gobi Mongol tribe. The reason he could become the leader of the tribe was because of Demutu's help. Now was the time to use this pawn. Very soon, the news reached Hubo'er's subordinates, who were 20 kilometers away. When he saw the note, he completely relaxed. It seemed like his worries were unnecessary. It was all because the mercenaries trusted the Gobi Mongol tribe too much. This was their chance. After God knows how many days, Hubo'er could finally have a good night's sleep. They only had to wait until dawn to launch their attack. At that time, with Lakshan's attack from above and Demutu's help, they would be able to deal heavy damage to the mercenaries. On the black stone slope halfway up the mountain, Lakshan's army was also resting. They were also conserving their energy and waiting for the dawn to come so that they could counterattack with all their might. Before Tuachuobuhua's main force arrived, they would first inflict heavy damage on the mercenaries and make a great contribution. The mercenaries' camp at the foot of the mountain also fell into silence. They were ordered to rest early after dinner, as though they were also preparing for the upcoming battle. However, very few people knew that the time they chose for the battle was not dawn, but the middle of the night. When it was the third night watch, which was the wee hours of the morning, the mercenary camp suddenly sounded a hurried whistle. The horn for an emergency assembly was officially blown. Countless soldiers in neat military uniforms walked out of the large tent, holding their sabers and leading their horses as they began to assemble. Although it was still pitch black at the top of Saihan Mountain, the densely packed mercenaries were already waiting with their swords in hand, ready for battle. The top of Saihan Mountain, which was where Lakshan's bait was not like what the outside world had guessed. There was only one battalion, but there were 20 battalions. In the past few days, the number of water carts delivering water to the top of the mountain had suddenly increased. However, few people knew that every carriage that went up the mountain was filled with mercenaries. They used the excuse of delivering water as an excuse to sneak into the mountain. All of this was part of Yang Qindong's plan. He wasn't a god, so he naturally didn't expect the Tatar army to use this as an attacking point to start the first battle. The reason why he had arranged for 20 battalions of soldiers and horses to be stationed here was to have an opportunity to deal a heavy blow to the Tatar army. However, he did not expect that it would come in handy so soon. The person in charge of hiding and guarding the mountain was none other than Su Yunsheng, who had just been promoted to captain of the reconnaissance team. This Su Yunsheng was an old man. When Yang Qindong was fighting in the Southern Ming dynasty, he had served in the military. It could be said that he was a person with many military achievements. However, considering the importance of scouts and the extremely high standards of personnel, his official position was not high. However, as a regiment commander, he was given the rank of senior colonel, which was enough to prove his worth. If there came a day when he was no longer willing to work in the reconnaissance group, he was more than qualified to be a division commander. The mercenaries had their own security bureau, but it was hard to guarantee that the other forces would have their own intelligence organizations. Knowing that it was very likely that the senior officers under his command had already been targeted, Yang Qindong did not use them this time. Instead, he sent Su Yunsheng, who had always been elusive, to the mountain to be in charge of this undercover mission. Tian Hu and Bai Shuang were also on the mission with Su Yunsheng. They were all outstanding students in the First City Academy, especially in the field of military studies. This time, the two of them were assigned to cooperate with Captain Su in the battle, which was also a chance for them to participate in actual combat. 3 smart people, 3 capable people gathered together so their strength could be imagined. When they received the report from the foot of the mountain that someone had set their sights on Mount Saihan, the 3 of them discussed and decided to beat them at their own game. They took the initiative to give up the magnetite slope halfway up the mountain. While showing weakness to the enemy, they were also looking for the best opportunity. Originally, the 3 of them were a little distressed. If Lakshan's troops attacked the top of the mountain, what would they do? They didn't expect the other party to cooperate with them so much that they would surround them but not attack. This made the 3 of them overjoyed, and at the same time, they arranged for the 20 battalions to rest early. At around 11 o'clock at night, They woke everyone up and prepared for the night attack. Night battle was one of the subjects that the mercenaries often trained in. When their nutrition could completely keep up, the so-called night blindness had nothing to do with them. With such a foundation, they already had the conditions to fight at night. And tonight was the time for them to launch a large-scale counterattack. Didn't Lakshan want to launch a two-pronged attack? Well, then let's give him a taste of his own medicine. Let's launch a two-pronged attack and completely annihilate him. The timing was a few hours earlier than the other party's attack, and they were already prepared. This allowed the mercenaries to gain the upper hand and have more chances of winning. In the early hours of the morning, the mercenary camp at the foot of the mountain became lively. With a flash bomb that lit up the sky for half a day, the general attack began. Troops began to attack Mount Saihan one after another. The sudden attack caught the enemy, who was resting on the magnetite slope halfway up the mountain, off guard. Lakshan came out of the large tent. As he put on his armor, he asked Wuxia, who had rushed over, "What's going on?" "I'm not sure yet, but it seems like the mercenaries launched the attack in advance." Wuxia replied with a puzzled expression. "Attacking at night or charging up the mountain, humph. I really don't know who gave the mercenaries the courage to face the enemy like this." "Oh right, there's still a battalion of enemies on the mountain. There's no need to keep them here. Quickly send people to take them down." Lakshan's face revealed a cold expression. Although the mercenary strategy of attacking in the middle of the night was somewhat unexpected, he had the higher ground and did not slack off in his defense at night. It would not be easy for anyone to attack up the mountain. He only needed to wait until dawn, when his vision was no longer obstructed, and then he could lead the main force to launch a counterattack. However, would the mercenaries give them a chance to launch a counterattack? Just as Lakshan was still giving orders to Wuxia, deafening battle cries suddenly sounded from the top of Mount Saihan behind them. 8,000 mercenaries charged down the mountain like ferocious tigers. Poor Lakshan. He had never taken the mercenaries on the mountain seriously, so he only arranged for 1,000 soldiers to defend. Logically speaking, 1,000 soldiers should be enough to fight against 400, but 1,000 against 8,000 was not a small difference. The 1,000 Tatar army did not even have time to figure out what was going on. They were greeted by a rain of arrows. Hundreds of people were injured and killed by the arrows. Then, their defensive line was instantly overwhelmed by the mercenaries who rushed down the mountain. Su Yunsheng, who was mixed in with the army, laughed loudly and waved the saber in his hand as he shouted, "Comrades, it's time to perform meritorious deeds. Charge! Charge!" Tian Hu and Bai Shuang also shouted crazily, their eyes flashing with excitement. The sudden appearance of the 8,000 mercenaries made the Tatar army dizzy. They had no idea where so many enemies had come from. Lakshan continuously mobilized his army to stop the Tatar army while lighting 3 bonfires that he had prepared beforehand. This was a signal for reinforcements. If the situation became dangerous, he would be able to use this to call for help from Hubo-Er's subordinates. The sudden movement of the mercenaries naturally did not escape the eyes of Hubo-Er's scouts. After the news was reported, Hubo-Er got out of bed and saw the 3 bonfires lit. This made him very confused. What's going on? The battle has just begun. Why is General Lakshan asking for help? Are the mercenaries really so brave that they have already reached the middle of the mountain? Impossible. Mu Run shook his head. The magnetite slope is a gentle slope that is about 2 li long. Although it is not very steep, it is long. The mercenaries could not have reached the middle of the slope so quickly. That's right. The terrain there is easy to defend and hard to attack. It is impossible for them to fall so quickly. General Hulin agreed. Forget it. Forget it. Let's not worry about that for now. Since Lakshan has requested for help, he must have met with some unsolvable problem. How about this? We will immediately support him. General Hulin, quickly gather 5,000 cavalrymen and launch a fierce attack on the mercenary camp. General Mu Ren, follow up with 5,000 cavalrymen. No matter what, you must attract the attention of the mercenaries and reduce the pressure on General Lakshan. The sudden attack of the mercenaries caused the entire battlefield to move. Countless mercenaries moved out in an orderly manner, as though they had already decided on their target. On the other hand, the leaders of the Mongol tribes gathered in Narasong's tent with sleepy eyes. Even now, they did not know what was going on. All right, since everyone is here, I will now assign the tasks. But before that, there's something we need to do first. Where's General Demutu? Na Raizong suddenly shouted as he looked at everyone with an excited expression. Yes. Instinctively, Demutu responded. As soon as he agreed, 2 burly Mongolian men immediately rushed towards him. Seeing that the situation was not good, he wanted to pull out his sword to resist. However, how could he be a match for them when they were unprepared? He was immediately pressed down. After being pressed down firmly, Demutu struggled to no avail. He immediately shouted, Narasong, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to use this opportunity to eliminate the dissidents? And all of you, are you just going to watch? Let me tell you, if he takes care of me today, he will take care of all of you tomorrow. Shut up, you traitor. Seeing that there was indeed a commotion in the crowd, Narasong immediately shouted. Originally, some of the leaders wanted to ask Narasong what he was trying to do. If he really wanted to eliminate them, then they would have to fight back. However, once they heard the word traitor, they immediately shut their mouths. Chapter 885. Demutu. You are the traitor that Tuachuo Buhua planted in our tribe. Here are the letters you left behind when you contacted them. What else do you have to say? Na Raizong threw the letters onto the table. You searched my tent. Na Raizong, what right do you have to do that? Leaders and generals, he can search my tent for no reason today. Tomorrow he might do the same to you. Everyone, you have to fight back. Demutu saw that the situation was not good, so he tried to persuade everyone. That's enough. Keep your mouth shut. Demutu. Everyone else went back to their own tents after the meeting. You were the only one who let out a gerfalcon. What is the meaning of this? Who are you sending a message to? Do you think you did it without anyone knowing? Let me tell you, your every move has been discovered. What else do you have to say for searching your tent? Na Raizong would not allow Demutu to argue. He pointed out all kinds of mistakes. For a moment, the leaders and generals in the tent did not dare to make a move. Demutu only left those letters as evidence when he returned to Tuachuo Buhua's side in the future. He did not expect that the letters would become evidence of his crimes. At this moment, he knew that he could not change the situation. He could only shout, That's right. I am Tuachuo Buhua's man. He is the ruler of the grassland. Yang Qindong is just a Han. How can he lead us? Sooner or later, they will devour all of us. What we are doing now is helping the evildoer. Men, shut his mouth. Take him away and behead him in public. Also, behead his family in the tribe. This is the fate of a traitor. Na Raizong's eyes were cold. He was really angry at this moment. Before the war, the Mongol tribe of the Gobi Desert did not want to kill the enemy. Instead, they wanted to collude with the enemy. This made him feel humiliated. None of the leaders or generals pleaded for Demutu's fate. Since he was a traitor to the entire Gobi Desert Mongol tribe. Not only could the mercenaries not tolerate such a person, even they would not allow him to exist. No one wanted to feel like they were being watched by a traitor. At the foot of the mountain, Hu Lin led 5,000 cavalrymen and charged down Mount Saihan. The mercenaries had already expected Yang Qindong's appearance. It was said that besieging a stronghold to attack reinforcements was our army's specialty during wartime. Yang Qindong was very proficient in commanding such a battle. In this plan, the Tatar division had long been waiting along the path that they had to pass through. They were only waiting for the 5,000 cavalry led by Hu Lin to appear in the encirclement. Then, heaven-shaking battle cries sounded from both sides. A total of 20 battalions and a division of 8,100 cavalry charged out from both sides. The sound of arrows piercing through the air shot towards the unprepared but anxious Tatar cavalry. It was not the first time for Su He to fight a war between Tatars and Tatars. In the past, he was Agador's subordinate and did not get along well with Tuachuo. Now that he had such an opportunity, how could he be lenient? The 8,000 cavalrymen launched a surprise attack with their bows and arrows, killing at least 500 cavalrymen and injuring countless enemies. Hu Lin, who was charging, was stunned by this sudden ambush. Hu Lin was not a brainless person. After receiving the order, he was already prepared to be ambushed. However, he had only left the camp for 5 miles. How could he have encountered the enemy? Didn't this mean that the enemy's troops were all at his doorstep? Were the scouts of the Tatar army all incompetent? This was a little unfair to those scouts. Su He and the others had only just moved here. Before the scouts of the other side could report back, everything had already begun. Unprepared, Hu Lin's army retreated again and again until they met Mu Run and the 5,000 cavalrymen behind them. Only then did they stabilize their footing. At that moment, the two armies converged and charged towards the Tatar division. Retreat! Su He did not want to fight head-on with the other side. Seeing that he had already gained a lot of advantages and had killed more than 2,000 enemies with his bows and arrows, he let the horn officer blow the horn. A division of cavalrymen quickly retreated. Chase! Hu Lin, who had been beaten until he was dizzy, was furious. Without doing anything, he had lost 40% of his troops. A flame of anger burned in his heart. He could not wait to charge forward and kill the mercenaries. General Hu, the situation is not right. It is better not to be rash. Seeing that the mercenaries had retreated the moment he appeared, Mu Run had a bad feeling. Logically speaking, the other side should have been prepared and should not have retreated. It was as if they were tempting him to continue. What is wrong? It is obvious that the other side is cowardly and does not dare to face our cavalrymen head-on. They only know how to shoot arrows. If General Mu is afraid, then wait here for General Hu's arrival. I will bring my men and chase after them. The furious Hu Lin had lost his mind at this time. All he thought about was taking revenge for his brothers. How could he listen to anyone else's words? Hu Lin did not listen to his advice and continued to chase. Mu Run could only shake his head and smile bitterly. While ordering the army to follow, he also sent someone to report the situation to General Hu Bo and ask him to immediately send out the necessary reinforcements. Moreover, Hu Lin took the lead, leading the remaining 3,000 cavalrymen in a fierce chase. In just an hour, they arrived at the foot of Mount Saihan. At this moment, the Tatar division that had been retreating earlier had stopped in their tracks and gotten into formation. It looked as though they would charge forward and devour them if they dared to come over. One side had a division of 20 battalions and 8,100 people. The other side only had 3,000 people. Hu Lin was furious, but at this moment, he could only suppress his anger and wait for the main force behind him to arrive. The first to arrive was Mu Rin. About a quarter of an hour after he arrived, General Hu Bo also arrived. Following him were 8,000 cavalrymen. In other words, only 2,000 cavalrymen were left behind to guard the headquarters. What's the situation? The moment Hu Bo arrived, his gaze first fell on General Su He and the enemy cavalrymen. He then raised his head to look at the dense sounds of fighting halfway up Saihan Mountain. The torches there were connected to one another. Looking from afar, one could still feel the intensity of the battle. General, there are close to 10,000 mercenaries blocking our way. Hu Lin requests to charge. After seeing Hu Bo Hu Lin was filled with courage. General, the situation on the mountain doesn't seem right. Logically speaking, after fighting for so long, General Lakshan should have chased the mercenaries down the mountain. Why is it still in a stalemate? Mu Run raised his head to look at the mountain with a puzzled expression. Even if the mercenaries suddenly attacked, with the terrain, Lakshan should have chased them down the mountain very quickly. How could the battle still not end after 2 hours? Although they were too far away and couldn't see the situation clearly, they could tell from the battle cries that this wasn't a situation where one side had a complete advantage. Instead, the battle was in a stalemate. This was a very strange thing. That's right, the situation is unclear. Let's wait and see. Since they could not figure out the situation, Hu Bo decided to be careful and observe the situation. If Lakshan was doomed, then he would retreat immediately and not continue to fight the mercenaries. What's there to wait for? Didn't the report say that the Mongolian tribes in the northeast sent out 20,000 cavalrymen to help the mercenaries? They must be the ones attacking the mountain, causing the stalemate. Humph! These mercenaries sure have a good plan. Using other people's soldiers to attack us, they are using a borrowed knife to kill us. Hu Lin saw that no one was paying attention to him and was extremely dissatisfied. Seeing that Hu Bo was still suspicious, he immediately voiced out his thoughts. Oh, that makes sense. Hearing Hu Lin's words, Hu Bo nodded in agreement. This was enough to show that if he was the commander of the mercenaries, he would also think of a way to use the 20,000 cavalrymen. After all, they were not his trusted subordinates. If they died, it would not be a pity. On the contrary, he would be able to use this opportunity to get rid of his enemies. It was killing two birds with one stone. But will they be so obedient? Mu Ren raised his own objection. That was 20,000 cavalrymen. Their military strength was no less than the new mercenary army. They would be so obedient. If someone told them to charge, they would charge even if they knew it would be difficult. They would even charge even if they would suffer heavy losses. That makes sense. Hu Bo nodded. Originally, he wasn't such an indecisive person. But after losing to the mercenaries in Tulu City, he was really scared. Now, he was very careful and cautious in everything he did. The commander was hesitant, but this made Hu Lin anxious. Without receiving any orders, he could only suppress his urge to charge out and watch helplessly. Hu Bo's subordinate, Mu Ren, looked at the mountainside. He believed that even if the 20,000 Mongol soldiers charged out, they would not be able to last for long. After all, they were limited by the terrain and their numbers were similar. With the terrain, Lakshan's victory was only a matter of time. Time passed minute by minute. Another hour had passed. Finally, the battle cries from halfway up the mountain became softer. Many of the torches on the mountain that seemed to cover the sky had also been extinguished. Seeing this, Mu Ren finally heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Hu Bo and said, "General, I believe that General Lakshan has already stabilized the situation. The enemy's morale must have dropped. This is the time for us to pincer attack." "That's right. Come, pass down my orders. Prepare to charge." Hu Bo was also relieved. He laughed and was about to give the order to charge. At this moment, a soldier beside him suddenly shouted, "Fire! Fire! It's right behind us. It seems to be the direction of our camp." Chapter 886. This shout attracted the attention of the three generals. At this moment, the fire seemed to have lit up half the sky. The experienced soldiers estimated that it was about 20 miles away. Wasn't that their camp? What's going on? Hu Bo asked in confusion. Shouldn't the mercenaries focus on attacking the mountain and stopping them? How could they still have the energy to attack their own camp? No one answered Hu Bo's question. After a few moments of silence, countless shouts came from all directions. Following that, the scouts around the army quickly reported back. "General, there are enemies in the east. General, there are enemies in the west. There are countless of them. General, there are people behind us. Because it's too dark, we can't see how many people there are. We can only see the torches and shadows." Hu Bo's expression changed again and again. He couldn't understand why so many enemies had suddenly appeared. Where did they come from? How could the mercenaries have so many soldiers? Could it be that all the mercenaries in the beginning city had been mobilized? Hu Bo obviously did not understand. These were the 20,000 cavalrymen from the Gobi Mongol tribe, as well as the new heavy cavalry, light cavalry, and the scouts. Just as Mu Ren had suspected, charging up the mountain was not something that anyone was willing to do. Even if the mercenaries gave the order, the Gobi Mongol army would not follow it. This was obviously a suicidal move. It was not something that could be obeyed with just a single order. In fact, the army attacking the mountain was only one division of the new army. Of course, there were also the 8,000 mercenaries who had charged down from the top of Saihan Mountain. Su Yunsheng suddenly brought 8,000 soldiers down from the sky and caught Lakshan off guard. Although he did not understand why there were 20 enemy battalions on the mountain, the battle had already begun and he had no way out. First, he sent Mu Qi to lead 5,000 soldiers to stop the mercenaries' charge. With the advantage and preparation, how could 5,000 soldiers stop them? In less than an hour, the army was defeated and Mu Qi died in the battle. At this moment, the new division of the new army began their attack from the foot of the mountain. For a moment, Lakshan was attacked from both sides, and the situation was critical. Taking advantage of the chaos in the Tatar army, Su Yunsheng rushed down the mountain, broke through several enemy lines of defense, killed his way to the pass of the Black Stone Slope, and seized it. No one stopped them anymore. The recruits at the foot of the mountain successfully ascended the mountain. After the two armies met, they had a huge advantage in terms of numbers. They charged straight for Lakshan's army. Amidst the chaos and the death of their general, the morale of the Tatar army plummeted. They were no match for Su Yunsheng and Lu Zhua. Amidst the chaos, many Tatar cavalrymen dismounted and surrendered. Only Lakshan and his 5,000 cavalrymen continued to resist. The chaotic scene that Hu Bo-er and Mu Ren saw at the foot of the mountain was exactly this moment, and it was completely different from what they had guessed. It wasn't Lakshan who was killing the mercenaries, but the mercenaries who were fighting back. They only had 5,000 cavalrymen, and they were all panicking and low in morale. How could they be a match for the mercenaries who were full of fighting spirit? After a few attacks, the formation of the army was in chaos, and their morale was low. In less than an hour, Lakshan had died, and his cavalrymen had either died or surrendered. The battle at the waist of the mountain had ended, and the next step was to deal with Hu Bo-er's troops at the foot of the mountain. According to Yang Qindong's words, it was like eating one and watching one. Now that they had finished eating, it was time to eat the one they had been watching. Hu Bo-er had made the wrong judgment, thinking that they had the advantage in the chaos at the waist of the mountain. Due to the wrong analysis of the situation, and the mistake of not choosing to escape, they had completed the encirclement in the 2 hours they had been at the foot of the mountain. 20,000 cavalrymen were currently charging towards Hu Bo-er's 16,000 cavalrymen from all directions. The first to act were the mercenaries, and Tiger's Man personally led his troops to attack. An independent division was not part of the First Army, and Tiger's Man could not stop them. However, the only thing he could do was to transfer the 6-gun battalions from the independent division to the army. Now, the first one to charge at them was this gun squad. More than 2,000 pitch-black muzzles from the 6 battalions rang out, landing in the midst of the Tatar cavalry, drawing out streams of blood and taking away the lives of several hundred cavalry. "Break out! All of you break out!" Seeing that the enemy in front of them had guns and was so ferocious, Hu Bo-er had no choice but to give up on the idea of joining forces with Lakshan. Instead, she rode her horse out. She had no idea how many enemies there were outside, and in the darkness, she could not determine the enemy's strength. The only thing she could do was try her luck and charge in all directions. Chase! The Tatar division commander Su, he saw that the enemy was about to escape, and he immediately led his 8,000 troops to give chase. At that moment, the bugle call for all troops to charge sounded out, and at the foot of Saihan Mountain, battle cries rang out everywhere. This was not a fair battle. Be it in terms of numbers or morale, before the battle even started, the Tatar cavalrymen were already in a passive position. Compared to the Tatar army that was like a headless fly, there were enemies everywhere, and they did not know when an arrow would land on them. As there were simply too many enemies, in order not to become a target, they even extinguished their torches. This caused many of them to run straight to the mercenaries and be killed or captured. The chaos on the battlefield lasted from night till dawn, and the mercenaries and the Mongol tribesmen killed and captured until dawn. Close to 20,000 Tatar troops were wiped out in one night, and in the end, only Hu Bo-er, Mu Ren and a few hundred others managed to escape. Even Hu Lin was killed by arrows. The North Ming Shen Mansion's commander-in-chief, who was also the commander-in-chief Shi Wanlin, and the deputy commander-in-chief, who was also the commander-in-chief Ning Wenfeng, used the excuse of returning to Lu City from Shi City as an excuse to pass by the battlefield and witness the end of the battle. They saw that the Tatar army lost 40,000 cavalrymen in just one night. Among them, 10,000 were killed and 30,000 were captured. The two of them remained silent. This kind of result was unimaginable. After having a direct understanding of the mercenaries' strength, they began to worry. If one day they were to become enemies with the mercenaries, would they be beaten like the Tatar cavalry without any strength to fight back? Compared to the two Baiming generals who were depressed, the 20,000 Mongol tribesmen were overjoyed. On this very night, they captured 10,000 enemies and seized countless warhorses, swords, and spears. However, they had only paid the price of less than 500 casualties. Such a huge victory was hard to come by in 100 years, and at this moment, they were filled with admiration for the strength of the mercenaries. It also made many of them more determined to follow the Heavenly Khan. The new army captured 20,000 enemies, and 2,000 died in the battle, and 3,000 were injured. This was mainly because they were heavily injured in the Battle of Shenshur Slope. However, this loss was nothing compared to what they had gained. Not long after, when the results of the battle reached Shi City, the entire city cheered and shouted, "Long live the Heavenly Khan," as they walked on the streets to celebrate. Inside the Yang mansion, compared to the silence outside, it was unusually quiet. Considering that the sixth young master had too many important matters to consider, the commoners within 2 miles of the Yang mansion were all cleared to create a quiet environment for him. Of course, because of this, his safety was much more guaranteed. Yang Qindong sat in the courtyard, and in front of him was the latest battle report. His right hand gently placed the report on the stone table, and Yang Qindong stood up and tidied his clothes. He knew that it was time for the final battle with the Tatar cavalry. Since the establishment of Shi City, it was first Agar Dorji from the Tatar tribe who brought 50,000 soldiers to find trouble with him, and then Hu Bo-er who brought 50,000 soldiers to find trouble with him. Now that they had all been defeated, Tuatuabuhua had finally appeared. He had brought 80,000 soldiers, and in the first battle he had killed 40,000 enemies. It must be very painful for him. "I'm a good person, and I like to do good deeds. Let me end your pain." Yang Qindong smiled and walked out of the Yang family manor. On a huge plain north of Saihan, the mercenaries and the Tatar cavalry finally met. Yang Qindong, the Heavenly Khan, and Tuatuabuhua officially met here. When a king meets a king must die. In just one night, half of the soldiers had been lost. When the news reached Tuatuabuhua's ears, his usually calm face revealed a trace of shock. Soon after, Hu Bo-er and Mu Run, who had escaped, were brought to his main tent. Tuatuabuhua's figure wasn't very tall. He was only 173 meters tall, and his weight of 120 kilograms made him look even less burly. However, it was this person who had unified the Tatar tribe and became their Khan. Once upon a time, Tuatuabuhua had caused many people to not be able to eat or sleep well. He had also caused many people to fear and hate him, including the Great Ming dynasty and the Walla's leader, Yeshen. But now he had been beaten to such a state. He was not willing to accept this. After hearing Hu Bo-er's report, Tuatuabuhua stretched out his right hand and pointed at the trembling Hu Bo-er. Then his finger moved and landed on Mu Ren. A defeated general must be punished. Otherwise, how can he lead the army? Men, drag him out and behead him in public. He'll be sacrificed to the army. Ah, Great Khan, no. I'm willing to be the leader of the suicide squad. I only ask that you give me a chance. General Hu, save me, save me. Amidst the shouts, the Mu Run was dragged out of the main tent. Hu Bo-er was left trembling. He knew that just now, the Khan had revealed his intention to kill him. He had taken a trip to the gates of hell. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.